a Embrapa. Continuaremos com a moderação do diretor adjunto da Divisão de Grãos e Oleaginosas do Ministério da Agricultura e Alimentação do Canadá, Tony McDowell.
Thank you, and welcome back. I'm sure everyone had a nice lunch. Mr. Silveira, our friend from Argentina, is in a bit of a rush, and I think we'll get directly into his presentation. I'm sure it'll be very interesting as usual.
Muito obrigado por essa invitação do Marcelo e do MAPA. Eu vou falar em inglês essa apresentação. What I want to say first is that everybody is talking about the new government of Argentina, but I want to point out that the elections didn't take place yet. The elections will be on 27th of October, and I, as a member of the actual government, could say that we have very big chance to be reelected. Sorry. Okay, some figures about Argentina, and then I will talk about the challenges of the country in the agricultural sector. We are the 8th largest country in the world in area, with a population of 43 million people, with a growing rate of only 1% per year of the population. So we are an empty country, but we produce a lot of food. We have 40 million hectares planted. It's the 9th country in the world in terms of seeding area, with a potentiality to increase up to 60 million hectares. We have various climates and topographies, large reserve of oil, gas, and renewable energy, water and mineral resources, good education level of the population without ethnic or religious conflicts, poor rail and road installation to transport and transfer our production. You will ask me, so why Argentina is like it is? The problem are we, the Argentines. The agricultural sector represents 18% of our GDP, employees 15% of our labor, participate in 65% of total exports. We have more or less 280,000 farmers. 80% of them are small and medium. We have 17,800 processing facilities, and we produce now food for 400 million people. This year, we have had the historical record in grain production of about 147 million metric tons of total grains. This represents the second historical record in our 4 years of government. And also, we recuperate our position in the export of beef. We were in the 2015 in the 12th position, and now we are within the 5 biggest exporters of beef. So I could say our policy for the agricultural sector was right, no? We are the first exporters of soybean meal, soybean oil, peanut oil in the world, the third exporters of corn and sunflower oil, but I think this year we will be the second in corn because we are estimating an export of 37 million metric tons. We produce also bioethanol and biodiesel. Here, you have a picture with the estimation of increasing of our production. We have an expectation if we stay at the government to have next year 150 million metric tons of grains, and for 2030 to touch the 180 million metric tons of grains and to produce and export more than 1 million metric tons of beef. Which are our challenges? Extend our planting area. As I show you, we have a capacity to extend it in 20 million hectares. Of course, some of them with irrigation. Increase our grain production, as I said. Increase our yields using the best technology. Our government sent to the Congress 2 years ago or 3 years ago a sea law, but because of the fighting between the political parties, is not already approved, but we need to have a seed law for protection of the investor who developed the new seeds. We have to design new instruments to secure the crops. The secure system in Argentina is not so good and not so enough. We dream to have a similar system that have the United States, no? In the United States you have insurance for planted area, for price, for cost, for everything. In Argentina, unfortunately, we don't support so much to the farmer, as you saw this morning in one of the pictures that we observe. Is maybe the only country in the world that collects export taxes. Russia and years ago did the same, but now it's only Argentina. For that reason, we believe that our farmers are the most efficient farmers of the world, because in spite they support this export tax, they are increasing their production. We have to continue investing in infrastructure for transportation, and in such sense, I could say that we are investing in trains, in rails. There is a big program, and this year we increased the transportation by rail from 15% of the grains up to 25%. Also, we have to improve the quality of our products according to the demand. As we heard during these days, there are a lot of changes in the habit of the consumers. Each day more vegetarians, vegans, non-sugar, and even there are people who eat only carrots. So we have to attend the demand of the consumers with a reduction of the chemical residuals and other matters, no? Regarding the Mercosur, this year, because our presidents of Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay put an effort, we finally end the treaty with European Union after 20 years. And we hope that this agreement will be approved by the European Parliament at the end of the story. But we also already signed an agreement with the EFTA, the 4 countries of the EFTA, and we are in negotiation with Canada, Korea, Japan, etc. I think Mercosur is changing the vision and try to move faster the treaties. When I used to travel a lot in order to open new markets for products of Argentina, and always we have to face the necessity to sign sanitary protocols that is more or less easy. It's a question of time. But the other matter is the duties that we have to pay to enter in different countries. The Mercosur lost a lot of time. For example, Chile, they have more than 60 or 70 free trade agreements. So you go to India and the Chilean apples pay 0% of duties and the Argentine 15%. And you want to, any place, the Chileans are paying less than the members of the Mercosur. So the Mercosur should move. If not, there is no sense. And I think our 2 presidents during this year put the best effort to finalize these 2 agreements with European Union and EFTA. Another challenge is to reduce the cost of transactions and try to be more competitive. I will put an example of the change of our policy. For example, in the case of the wheat, former government of Argentina not only put export taxes of 23% to the wheat, but also we have had quotas of export quotas. So that produced a reduction in the local prices of the wheat and a reduction in our production. And when we arrived to the government, we removed these quotas and we obtained an increase in the production of more than 65%. in the case of wheat, and we are now again in the international market, not only supplying wheat to Brazil, which is around 5 million metric tons, but also exporting 8 million more to different countries. This year, the second importer will be Indonesia. This is the last one. Here you could see the change in production. You know, in 1990, we were producing 33.6 million metric tons of grains, and this year this is old. This year we are producing 147, so we multiply by 5. So depends. You see also the increase in the cereal export here, and in the oilseeds and the soybean complex here. Argentina is, as I said, the main exporter of soy oil and soybean meal. We are affected by this commercial war between the United States and China, and also affected by the African swine fever, because if the Chinese consume less feed, that will affect our grains. But we are transforming the grains into meat, and I think that together with the transformation, the grains into ethanol and biodiesel are the two ways to change the schedule or the structure. And now, as you could see, we are the third exporter of grains. And I think, as I mentioned this morning, that together with Brazil, Paraguay, who is increasing the production, we have a power that we didn't use so well until now. So we have to work together to use that power in a better way in future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jesus. That was a very interesting presentation. I think if there is one or two questions, because I think Jesus has to leave right away. I don't know if anyone has any questions right now for Jesus. Oh, we have one question here.
Jesus, vou falar em português. Você mencionou na sua apresentação, muito rapidamente, agora ao final, sobre a transformação de grãos em carnes. Você vê a Argentina sendo uma grande produtora e exportadora de carne de pollos e cerdos no médio prazo? Há investimentos nessa área em curso na Argentina hoje?
Okay, thank you. Sorry. As you can see, I think so. We are increasing our export of chicken, In the case of pork, it's more difficult because Argentina, in fact, we are also an importer of pork meat. We are importing from Brazil a lot of we call bondiola, no? Which is a cut of the pork, and we are importing jams from Spain and Denmark, for example. But there are many projects of investment in that sector also. Of course, they are waiting what will happen with this election, no? And this election, you know that Argentina in the past has a president period of 6 years. Now, due to a change of the constitution in 1994, the presidential period is only for 4 years. And 4 years in Latin America is something crazy, you know. And we have to vote each 2 years to renew the parliament. So that is one of the political problems that we are facing in Argentina because of this change of the constitution. But I think if we continue in the government, there will be many investment in the pork sector, especially from the Chinese companies like COFCO and such kind of companies.
Thank you, Jesus. Marcello has a question here.
Jesus, obrigado aí pela sua apresentação. Como você mesmo mencionou, corre-se o risco de haver uma mudança política forte na Argentina, tá certo? Por outro lado, a gente vê que pela sua apresentação que as suas projeções são muito otimistas para a agricultura na Argentina. Eu sei que é difícil de antever isso, mas você acredita que poderia haver uma mudança na política agrícola na Argentina com uma eventual mudança no governo?
Se nós miramos para trás, eu acredito que o partido peronista ou cristinista tem outras ideias diferentes, não? Tem ideias diferentes, and in the past, sorry to mix with Portuguese. In the past, they took a different policy regarding the agricultural sector. They believe in the past that the farmers were their enemies, and they treat the farmers as enemies. We treat the farmers as partners, no? As partners. It's different, the point of view, no? So I think, but I'm each day more optimistic that we will be reelected, because I see that this campaign of our president going to all the country and calling for supporting this, yes, we can, which is similar with the Obama campaign, is giving effect. I don't want to see personally anymore in Argentina the old way of thinking, or even in Latin America. I don't like to see in Ecuador what is happening now, and I think all is part of the same ideologic movement.
Thank you, Jesus. So we have one more question, and then we're going to move on.
Yes. Hi, this is Paulo De Salvo from the Inter-American Development Bank. Just following up a bit on the discussion that you're having, like you showed that in 2015 there was a big shift in the policy, in the agricultural policy of the government, like reducing a lot export taxes. which was well perceived by the agricultural sector. But then, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like in the last 2 years, there has been a partial going back to this kind of measures, basically because of fiscal necessities somehow. And I understand that in the last few months, things have gone in that direction again. So what is the perspective? Like, as you said, like if the opposition wins, they might go back to that kind of policies. But like, what is the path that you see and that you propose to the agricultural sector if you're confirmed in government?
Yes, when we arrived to the government, for example, we have had 23% export tax for the wheat, 20% for the corn, 35% for soybeans. Now we have more or less 6% for wheat and corn and 25% for soybean. So in spite, in 2018, we put again a little export tax. It's not the same rate that in the past, no? And the promise of President Macri is to take out these export taxes in December 2020. And I think in Argentina, we have to find another system to collect taxes, no? The farmers should pay the income tax as every other companies and every other people in Argentina. It's not possible that the farmers should pay income tax and export tax too. It's too much. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, Jesus. I guess we do have one more question, but that's it for questions. After that, we're going to move on to the next speaker. Thank you.
Desculpe, Jesus, mas eu fiquei com uma dúvida na sua apresentação. Me pareceu que eu vi você mencionar a área, apareceu na lâmina, que a Argentina cultiva 40 milhões de hectares, podendo chegar a 60 milhões de hectares. Eu pensei que fosse um pouco menos. É isso mesmo?
No, esse é trabalho que is a work that our Institute of Agricultural Technology did. We could extend the area with irrigation, and also if we reduce the freights, no? For that reason, the investment in the rail, because there are areas that are not incorporated because of the high cost of freight to the ports.
Thank you, Jesus. We're going to move on to our next speaker right now. So we're going to talk about climate change and its synergies with sustainable business in the Brazilian agricultural sector. So from Embrapa, I'd like to invite up the coordinator of climate change, Mr. Pellegrino.
Boa tarde a todos. Eu agradeço tanto ao Ministério da Agricultura quanto à FGV e os demais organizadores do evento pelo convite e pela oportunidade de apresentar um pouco do que a Embrapa está fazendo, mas sempre muito vinculado ao Ministério e as diversas ações que o país tem feito nesse tema da mudança climática, né? Aqui um pouco de histórico da evolução da agricultura no Brasil, esse desafio de ter a produção no cinturão tropical, desde da década de 70, numa situação de certa insegurança alimentar, né? Tanto na questão derivada da questão de importação de alimentos, da baixa produção agrícola, da produção concentrada no sul, no sudeste, enfim, de diversas ausência de tecnologia, políticas públicas, e, enfim, diversos fatores que precisariam ser superados, né, para que a gente conseguisse vencer essa tarefa de gerar de vencer esse desafio e conseguir avançar na nossa produção e na condição geral do setor agrícola. Isso foi amparado por um amplo sistema de pesquisa e inovação, não só pela Embrapa, né, com o seus mais de 40 centros e uma grande capilaridade no país, com uma atividade até visionária, né, na época, mas também com a integração com diversas universidades públicas e privadas, e a FGV é um exemplo disso, né, sempre tem sido parceira da Embrapa, bem como os sistemas estaduais, né, os sistemas estaduais de pesquisa, enfim, e também parcerias, obviamente, privadas, né, com diversos setores. Isso permitiu essa evolução do setor agrícola, né, que esse gráfico já é bem conhecido, e inclusive hoje pela manhã já foi comentado, essa desproporção entre o crescimento da área de produção e de nossa produção de fato, ou seja, um grande aumento da produtividade em si, né? Isso foi devido, né, à pesquisa ter conseguido dar soluções, por exemplo, gerando materiais genéticos que permitisse essa tropicalização, fixação biológica de nitrogênio. Essa aqui é uma pesquisa bastante recente também de uso de inoculantes para aproveitamento do fosfato já disponível no solo, com as aplicações e que estavam imobilizados, enfim, aumentando a eficiência da produção. O zoneamento agrícola de risco climático é os colegas do MAPA estão aqui e a gente tem uma forte interação na Secretaria de Política Agrícola com essa política sendo a base dos programas do Proagro, hoje trabalhando junto com o pessoal do Garantia Safra também, numa remodelagem, enfim, de vários programas da política agrícola, né, e gerando análises da vulnerabilidade, podemos dizer assim, ou do risco atual, né, da agricultura, e indicando onde se deve plantar, onde não se deve plantar, em que período, que cultivares, em que solos, enfim, analisando todo esse contexto, e isso foi um grande indutor tecnológico, né, e que permitiu esse avanço da produção brasileira. O sistema de integração lavoura, pecuária, floresta também tem avançado bastante. É um dos sistemas que são sistemas que integram vários elementos, né, em conjunto, diversificando a produção, mas também servindo de alternativa para vários fatores de risco, né, sejam eles climáticos, sejam risco de produção, seja a questão de diversificação, questão de aprofundamento de raiz nos solos, enfim, a gente tem diversos benefícios vinculados à ILPF, à Integração Lavoura, Pecuária e Floresta. E a Embrapa tem feito um esforço de uma reestruturação, de cada vez mais se aproximar e gerar soluções em temas estratégicos, nas cadeias estratégicas do agronegócio. E um desses portfólios, né, é o de mudanças climáticas, né, que nessa palestra a gente está tentando fazer justamente essa relação. O que é que tem a ver a mudança climática, né, com essa história toda enfim, de opções de mercado e de negócio. O portfólio de mudança climática, ele busca promover, tem como seu objetivo estratégico, promover a adaptação e a sustentabilidade da agricultura brasileira frente a esses desafios. Especificamente, os desafios impostos pela mudança climática, contribuindo para a segurança alimentar e para o controle das emissões de gases de efeito estufa. Então, essa figura de portfólio, ela tenta integrar as ações que a Embrapa desenvolve em temas estratégicos, e a mudança climática é um deles. Internamente, a gente se estrutura em diversos projetos, obviamente a intenção não é detalhar nada disso, mas apenas para mostrar que a gente tem trabalhado muito com a questão da simulação dos cenários futuros, né, até muito baseado na experiência do zoneamento, usando os mesmos modelos para simular como é que seria a condição da agricultura diante da mudança climática, né, tanto no crescimento das plantas, pragas e doenças, uso de recursos hídricos, uso da terra, mas também com relação à quantificação, o balanço de carbono, o quanto a gente emite, o quanto a gente armazena nos sistemas agrícolas, e tudo isso vinculado a uma derivação, uma preocupação de contribuir para as políticas públicas e sempre numa proximidade muito grande com o Ministério da Agricultura, né? Então, qual é essa relação dessa pesquisa, dessa ciência, desses desenvolvimentos com a mudança climática, da mudança climática com esses desafios e oportunidades para o setor agrícola, pensando nessa questão de mercado nacional e internacional, né, e desenvolvimento sustentável? Talvez essa pergunta fique até óbvia na nossa situação atual, porque a gente tem tido exemplos desse relacionamento, dessa influência, sobre a negociação internacional dos nossos produtos, né? Mas focando aqui na questão qual é o problema que a mudança climática traz para a agricultura, quais são as dificuldades. O principal problema é a redução de déficit hídrico, né, e uma perda de eficiência técnica, uma possível redução. Então, o problema é como é que a gente aumenta a produtividade, a eficiência econômica, a diversificação, insumos alternativos e diversas outras questões derivadas e relacionadas ao setor. Eu selecionei aqui, então, o zoneamento de risco climático, que eu já apresentei, e o plano ABC, né, que é o Plano Nacional para a Agricultura de Baixo Carbono, né? Então, dessas simulações todas que a gente vinha fazendo, de como é que isso afetaria o milho, soja e diversas outras culturas, qual seria o impacto disso nos cenários mais positivos, nos cenários mais negativos, né? A gente tem trabalho já desde a época de 2008 e antes, e continua fazendo essas simulações e tentando entender qual é a vulnerabilidade do setor. O zoneamento de risco climático, como eu falei, ele tem sido uma política que tem permitido ao Brasil economizar, a gente pode dizer assim, ele é um indutor tecnológico, ou seja, ele reduz esse risco e, por consequência, nos ajuda a economizar quando a gente pensa em perdas, caso ele não acontecesse, né? E sendo a base da diversa agricultura. E eu citei ele aqui porque, justamente, ele foi a base do que a gente começou a trabalhar lá em 2009, foi levado para Copenhague, como, desde uma demanda presidencial de ter uma proposta, né, para o que se chama de NAMAs, né, que são ações nacionalmente apropriadas, que foi levado lá para Copenhague, e rapidamente, por a gente ter essa estrutura e essa proximidade com o Ministério e toda aquela rede que a gente já acabou de mostrar, a gente conseguiu, em 3 meses, né, levar uma solução que acabou derivando no que se chama o Plano ABC, né? Obviamente, na COP15 isso não estava pronto, mas foi o início. E o Plano ABC sempre teve essa concepção, não só do lado da redução da emissão de carbono, como a gente quase que involuntariamente associa, né? Mas ele sempre teve, desde o seu início, desde esse período, uma preocupação de trazer eficiência para o sistema, para o setor agrícola, né? Então, nenhuma das ações que foram propostas lá no Plano ABC, elas são exclusivamente para reduzir a emissão de carbono, né? Até a principal, o critério para que ela pudesse entrar é que ela trouxesse eficiência para o sistema e pudesse promover renda e trazer ganhos de produtividade e promover a adaptação também, né? Então, a gente costuma ver aquelas ações do Plano ABC, para quem conhece o plano, obviamente eu não vou ter tempo para detalhar aqui, mas todas as ações elas têm esse caráter não só da mitigação, mas também da adaptação, ou seja, de promover um desenvolvimento sustentável para o setor, de forma que a gente consiga enfim, vencer esse desafio, né? Aqui, no Acordo de Paris, também, como a gente tinha as NAMAs, né, lá em Copenhague e nos anos seguintes, no Acordo de Paris, a gente teve um acréscimo, né, de responsabilidade ou de contribuições, que são as NDCs, as contribuições nacionalmente determinadas, né? E, recentemente, há 2 anos, na COP, houve uma decisão específica no setor agrícola, onde se reconhece, se dá o foco para o setor agrícola e se reconhece sua vulnerabilidade, e lá se usa mais ou menos a mesma lógica que a gente usou no ABC. São ações buscam-se ações de adaptação com co-benefícios, né, sejam eles de mitigação ou outros. E o Brasil tem ativamente participado, submetendo para todos os itens. Eu vou correr um pouquinho aqui, né? Aqui está reforçando a mesma ideia, né, da produção de renda, sustentabilidade e redução de emissões, ou seja, não são exclusivamente o objetivo do ABC, né? Inclusive, ele incorpora ações de adaptação explicitamente. Além disso, o setor agrícola, nos desafios de desenvolvimento sustentável, ele tem contribuído muito em interação com outros desafios, não só exclusivamente com, obviamente, com a mudança climática ou com a redução da fome, mas com diversos outros objetivos de desenvolvimento sustentável. E como é que a gente trabalha essa questão da negociação internacional e da influência desse tema no setor? A gente precisa medir, a gente precisa ter condições de medir. O que é que o plano ABC já conseguiu avançar, né? Então, existe a plataforma, né, que monitora as ações do ABC, e ela já tem lançado, aí são dados preliminares, então a gente não vai poder usar publicamente ainda, mas aqui para a gente já ver que as primeiras estimativas já estão mostrando, né, que a gente tem conseguido cumprir, primeiro, aquelas metas de NAMAs, né, aquelas ações nacionalmente apropriadas, mas nós temos um grande desafio ainda para frente de cumprir as NDCs. A FGV, né, ela cedia lá o observatório do ABC, não é isso? E participa, inclusive, da plataforma e tem contribuído. E eu gosto dessa figura porque, na verdade, ela tenta mostrar que a gente não pode, até pode, né, mas talvez não deva, monitorar exclusivamente a redução de emissão de carbono. Né? Para que o ABC tenha sucesso, e para que as políticas no setor agrícola voltadas à questão da mudança climática, a gente precisa ter o conceito completo da sustentabilidade. Não é só a questão ambiental, mas tem que ter um monitoramento da questão do benefício econômico. Quem adota essas ações, que benefício tem, né? Eu acho que hoje pela manhã, o doutor Jonathan, se não me engano, ele citou que os nossos agricultores são muito mais motivados pelo mercado, ou respondem melhor ao mercado, do que as políticas públicas, né? E eu concordo com isso, né? O agricultor ele não está tão preocupado com a questão ambiental ou reduzir a emissão de carbono. Ele está preocupado com isso, desde que eles consigam se manter na atividade, né? E esse monitoramento da melhoria econômica é que vai permitir isso. E, obviamente, a gente precisa entender também o lado social e o lado institucional até, de por que, quanto isso é adotado, e nesse ponto, e em vários outros, o Observatório do Clima também tem ajudado bastante. Essa aqui é uma tese defendida lá, orientada por nosso colega da Embrapa, Eduardo Assad, mas defendida no programa de mestrado do agronegócio lá da FGV, que justamente analisa essa questão que a sustentabilidade é lucrativa, né? Ela, além de ele oferecer métodos e métricas, para a codificação de carbono, ele tem mostrado que, na fazenda estudada, ela adotar essas práticas também ajudou a melhorar esses diversos fatores aqui que a gente definiu lá como risco estratégico para o setor. Nós temos outros trabalhos também com a The Nature Conservancy, que se chama Agroideal, que justamente busca identificar, no caso da soja e da pecuária, numa região do Cerrado, próximo à Amazônia, inclusive, identificando riscos e oportunidades para uma produção sustentável. E a lógica tem sido essa, de justamente integrar essas análises do risco climático, do risco ambiental, com o risco socioeconômico, né? E ter essa abordagem da sustentabilidade entendida de uma forma completa e respeitada, digamos assim. Aqui é uma ação, hoje se falou também pela manhã da questão da taxação do carbono e tal. Existe o lado da taxação, que nós temos que nos preocupar, mas a gente também tem que ter uma preocupação de reconhecer os esforços que vêm sendo feitos por quem está emitindo pouco. E a ideia de um selo, né, ou de carbono neutro, ou de baixo carbono, enfim, ela tem sido trabalhada pela Embrapa. Essa questão da gestão da informação toda dentro de um centro de inteligência climática que integra todas esses sistemas de monitoramento de risco essa informação trabalhada dentro de uma sala de situação é uma proposta que já existe lá no Plano Nacional de Adaptação e que nos parece uma forma adequada de integrar todas essas informações de risco social, econômico, ambiental, de mercado, para que a gente consiga ter um suporte à decisão adequado, né? Porque, justamente, o que a gente tem que almejar o que a gente almeja nessa questão da negociação internacional? Primeiro, existe uma influência do global dentro da nossa política agrícola, e a nossa política agrícola também tem trabalhado e se esforçado para influenciar o global, ou seja, são duas vias, né? E a gente precisa saber usar esse espaço. A gente também precisa entender que essa influência se expressa tanto como desafio, mas como oportunidade. Nós precisamos saber virar isso que a gente fica encarando como desafio e reage e vê como negativo, em adaptar, ter a criatividade de mudar o nosso modelo de negócio e transformar isso numa oportunidade para o setor, né? Enfim, e nós temos muito a mostrar. A gente, embora tenha sido muito criticado, obviamente não foi possível mostrar aqui, já até estourei meu tempo, a gente tem muito a mostrar. A gente vem fazendo ao longo desses anos um trabalho de evolução da agricultura sustentável, ou, né, num jargão utilizado bastante, climaticamente inteligente, e a gente precisa saber e conseguir buscar essas soluções que consigam atender. Não adianta a gente rejeitar o mercado, a gente tem que entender que o consumidor ele tem o seu poder, ele define, né, aquela máxima de que o cliente sempre tem razão. Nem sempre ele tem razão, mas a gente tem que respeitar o poder do consumidor, entender as suas demandas e por que aquilo é importante para ele, e saber agregar valor, oferecer produtos, né? E tudo isso vinculado à questão de risco, de novas tecnologias e muito focado na questão da sustentabilidade. Esse é um documento liderado pela equipe lá do Dr. Elísio, que está aqui, da Secretaria de Inteligência e Marca Estratégica da Embrapa, né? E que é um documento de visão de futuro da agricultura brasileira, que definiu como principais fatores e que garantisse a sustentabilidade da agricultura essa configuração e esses principais vetores. E aqui, para finalizar, uma fala do nosso querido Dr. Eliseu Alves, né? Posso chamar ele sócio fundador da Embrapa, né? Dizendo que a nossa agricultura ela não é feita de tratores, né, ou só de tratores, mas muito da ciência, e a gente precisa saber ouvir e aproveitar o conhecimento gerado para ter influência e saber aproveitar as oportunidades nesse mercado. Obrigado.
Thank you very much. That was a pretty in-depth presentation, and I'm pretty impressed at the amount of work that Brazil has put in already to meet the kind of climate challenges coming forward. I think we have enough time for one or two questions. One question, I'm being told. So who would like to ask a question of our panelist here? I have to say that being from Canada, it does seem like you're a bit ahead of even Canada in this regard. I shouldn't say that, but...
Boa tarde. Na verdade, eu não gostaria de fazer uma pergunta, e sim um chamado aos nossos negociadores internacionais quanto a essa questão da mudança climática. Nós temos exemplos fantásticos nesse país, e isso precisa ser levado aos fóruns internacionais, ao invés de nós sermos taxados de incendiar florestas, de estar contra tudo. Então, é só esse comentário e parabenizar a Embrapa e sua apresentação.
Muito obrigado. E só referenciando um pouco o comentário do Canadá, nós temos tido uma relação bastante estreita e já um programa de cooperação com a AgriFood Canadá, né, nesse sentido de troca de experiências e de aprendizado, não só iniciou-se pela questão da quantificação de carbono, mas eu tenho insistido com a equipe lá, com o colega Javier, para a gente trabalhar também essa questão da adaptação, como é que vocês estão trabalhando internamente essa questão da adaptação do setor agrícola, que também é a vertente... A gente não consegue ver o setor agrícola só trabalhando mitigação. Essas ações todas são sempre muito integradas, e mesmo que a gente pensasse de início que essas ações do ABC são para redução da emissão de carbono, elas são todas realmente adaptadoras dos sistemas agrícolas e trazem eficiência, né? Então, essa interação a gente tem trabalhado e tem sido um prazer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pellegrino. And for
Damos por encerrado o painel Desafios para a Agricultura na América Latina, os nossos agradecimentos aos participantes. Anunciamos o painel com o tema Políticas Públicas na América Latina, também dividido em 2 subtemas: avaliações da OCDE sobre as políticas públicas para a agricultura. Nesse subtema teremos dois palestrantes, Jesus Raton e Florence Bossart, economistas da OCDE. Por favor. E depois teremos o subtema Estudos do Banco Interamericano de Desenvolvimento para a Agricultura, Paulo de Salvo, economista do Banco Interamericano de Desenvolvimento. Moderador deste painel, Eduardo Sampaio Marques, secretário de Política Agrícola, MAPA.
Ok. Sem comentários, quem vai começar? You or you? Please, you can go ahead. Okay, thank you.
So good afternoon, and thank you for inviting us today. With Jesus Anton, this is our first time in Brazil, and we are really glad to have spent the last 2 days in Brasilia, meeting with the Ministry of Agriculture, and especially Mr. Wilson de Harojo and Mr. Moraes' team. We had a very interesting meeting. We also met with the Central Bank and the Treasury, and this was really good to be here. So thank you again for welcoming us so nicely. So first, I will talk about the OECD agricultural policy monitoring. And second, it will be the metrics. I will present evidence from OECD evaluation of agricultural policies in Latin America. Then Jesus will take over and will explain how these policy profiles align with the main challenge in Latin America. So the OECD has a long-standing experience measuring support to agriculture. For over 30 years, the OECD has provided information to help governments shape their agriculture policy design and has provided recommendations on practical ways to improve the agricultural policy performance. So how was this done? By developing a methodology, systematic and transparent, to bring together the diversity of policy measures applied by country. And the strength of this tool is that it translates policies into numbers that can be, also compared across time and across countries. So since 1986, the OECD has provided evidence and analysis with the ultimate objective of putting metrics into policy actions. So today we are collecting data for 53 countries, all of the OECD, so this means 36 countries, the EU, and 12 key emerging economies. Each year, we publish a monitoring and evaluation report summarizing all of our findings, and we also have a series of country studies linked to the monitoring where we give more in-depth analysis of agricultural policies. So among the 53 countries I mentioned, we are really glad to have on board 6 countries from Latin America, and the IDB, who will make the presentation just after us, is also calculating PSEs for other Latin American countries. And with IDB, we are sharing our work inside a consortium of international organizations, so with the World Bank, the FAO, IFPRI, where we are putting in common our analysis of support. So at the OECD, among our 6 countries, we have Mexico, which was one of the first to join our monitoring. Brazil joined the monitoring in 2005. Then Chile, Costa Rica, and Colombia in 2006, 14, 16. And Argentina, our latest arrival. So as you can see here, the agricultural sector is quite diversified. Countries are all over the graphs, and you can see large difference between them in terms of ag in GDP, so this is the horizontal axis, and in terms also of income per capita on the vertical axis. And you see that our 6 countries are on the left side of the graph. So they are among those with the highest income per capita and pretty low share of agriculture in the economy. All are net agricultural exporters. As was said this morning, Brazil is by far the leading exporter of agricultural and food products, followed by Argentina, which is also a big player. And both are major supplier of grains and oilseeds to global markets. The sector is characterized by a strong duality between large and exported-oriented farms, and also dominated by smallholders and family agriculture. So all 6 countries share the same challenges, as Jonathan explained, so feeding their population, fighting against inequalities by raising income in agriculture, increasing the productivity, and protecting the environment. So now I will explain our methodology. Actually, it will be just a short summary, one slide explaining more than 180 pages of our PSE manuals. So what we do at the OECD, we want to capture the overall support provided to agriculture by governments through agricultural policies. So here you see the different protagonists, so the different economic agents. So taxpayers, the government, consumers, that should be understood as the first stage buyers of agricultural commodities, like for example, food processors, and producers that we are considering individually or collectively. So support to producers comes in many forms and can be broadly divided into budgetary transfers and market price transfers. So budgetary transfers are the more evident. They are the subsidies provided by government and received by producers, like an input subsidies or direct payments. And we also include implicit budgetary support, like, for example, preferential interest rates offered to producers. But we are also considering another type of transfers, market price transfers, less visible but very important, especially in emerging economy. And these transfers arise from market interventions that alter the domestic price of commodities because of trade policies like a tariff or a domestic policies. And what we call PSE is the sum of the two. Then, in addition to producer support, we are also calculating contribution to producers collectively, and that represent transfers that benefit agriculture as a whole, such as research and development, innovation, infrastructure, all public goods that otherwise would be underprovided. From the consumer side, we are also calculated consumer subsidies and market price transfers associated to consumers. And the total support is the sum of the 3. So support to producers in blue, general services in green, and consumer subsidies. Okay, so here we see the global picture of support. So 3 main important points. We see that the policy transfers to individual producers dominate total supports very positively for Colombia and very negatively for Argentina. You also see the green bar, and we see that relative to government expenditure targeting producers, in most countries, investment in general services to agriculture remain lower. We also see this indicator as a percentage of GDP, and we see that the overall burden of agricultural support on the economy is high for some countries. For example, look at Colombia. So now we are going to look at the decomposition of the PSE, so I mean the decomposition of the blue bar, and in the next slide we will look at the decomposition of general services. So, what is important to measure is the level of support, but the composition of support is also very important, because the way support is provided will affect totally differently agricultural production, income, trade, or other outcomes like the environment. So this means actually that some types of support are more distorting than others. For example, if we look at the market price support, this is the red bar, we see that this support is quite important for some countries. For example, if you look at Costa Rica or Colombia, both are largely below OECD average, but support is highly distorted in both countries where domestic price on average are artificially maintained above international level. And also one thing important to understand is that when producers are supported through this type of measure, at the same time, and this is the other side of the coins, consumers are implicitly taxed. They pay prices higher than they would have without this type of policies in place. So this type of support to producers can harm consumers quite heavily, and especially poor consumers for which food expenditure are really important. Then you see Chile and Brazil. They have both a current percentage PSE of 2 or 3%. And here they provide support through relatively less marketing distorting channel. Both are very competitive and prices are well aligned with international prices. Mexico is the only country providing less distorting support, and on the left you see Argentina with negative market price support that is taxing its producers through all of the export restrictions mentioned in the presentation we just have, and export taxes. So in Argentina, unlike what I've just said for Colombia and Costa Rica, this is the opposite. Producers incur implicit losses in their receipts because their prices are lower than the international prices. So now one slide about support to general services. So this is the decomposition of the green bar that you saw before. So support to general services varies significantly across country in both importance and priorities. Extremely low in Argentina, more important in Chile or Colombia, Brazil. This means that countries emphasize different elements. We see that investment in R&D are priority for most countries. And this is a good news. They are investing a lot in agriculture and innovation system. And we also see that more than 50% of expenditure on general services in infrastructure in Chile. And here you also see the support to general services expressed as a percentage of the agricultural value added, so relative to the size of the agricultural sector. And like Mr. Eduardo Sampaio said, actually focus should be targeted more to these public goods. Government should do better, including the OECD countries, in investing more in public goods for the sector, and thus this will create better enabling conditions for agriculture. Thank you.
So let me continue with the same presentation, following my the presentation by Florence on what is the measurement that the OECD has done in terms of the PSEs and all the other indicators with respect to the agricultural policy in Latin American countries. But of course, when we do that in the OECD, we're interested also on what is the implications of these policies, assessing what is its impact and its capacity to respond to the challenges, to the objectives that are in place for these policies. And this is not easy because first, the different countries we have seen, the profiles are different, and therefore it will be difficult for me to finding good commonalities across them, and also because there are trade-offs between the different policy objectives, as has been mentioned before. But of course, agriculture, we have seen before that has been improvements in terms of the malnutrition in Latin American countries and in poverty in rural poverty in Latin American countries. This is associated, is not necessarily associated particularly with agricultural policies, but more likely with other policies and other circumstances like the general economic growth that has been taking place in the last few years. And also other policies, social policies on which, like cash transfers, on which Latin American countries have been pioneering for several years. At the same time, we know that these policies, when they are mostly distorting and they are supporting prices, they create higher prices for producers, and the fact, and also for consumers, and the fact that these distorting measures have been reducing in Latin American countries implies, of course, that these prices for consumers have also been reduced, and in that sense have benefited also consumers, particularly poor consumers. But in terms of agricultural policies, most of them are not particularly focused on the most targeted to the most poor farmers or poor producers, and therefore they have not that impact, including those policies which are more decoupled and therefore more efficient in transferring income to farmers, like in the case of Procampo in Mexico. Let me come now to another challenge, which is was mentioning particularly by the intervention of Eduardo Sampaio at the beginning, and I think it's a very important one, which is the fact that there is difficulties in access to credit, and this lack of access to credit is part of a situation in which there are very thin financial markets in most Latin American countries, and we observe, for instance, that for the average in the OECD, the total loans provided to the private non-financial sector is about 180% of the GDP, but in Latin American countries, except for Chile, these numbers are always below 100%, and it can be as low as 20% in Argentina or in Colombia. So that's a main concern because, of course, this lack of access to credit affects in an asymmetric manner, particularly small producers, and it also affects specifically the opportunities for investment and for innovation. There are in some countries some significant programs that are associated to facilitating credit, and this is the case of rural credit in Brazil, and this is part of the discussions that Florence was mentioning that we were having on Tuesday in the Central Bank and with the Treasury and in the Ministry of Agriculture, in which these measures are relatively large in terms of covering a big part of the total rural credit that is in Brazil. It is more difficult to measure what is the exact impact because there could be also effects in terms of crowding out other opportunities that could take in place in terms of financing in Brazil in the case that this system was not in place. And in any case, the problem of access to credit, very often it is a more systemic problem than just the agricultural sector, as we are seeing, and this requires more systemic solutions. We even, in the case of, we were thinking that in the recent past, this big macroeconomic financial instability was a bit out of the picture, but in the case of recent events in Argentina, we can see that this kind of very systemic risk can also take place. We have also in the table the percentage of the budget support that Florence was mentioning that is associated to credit, and in the case of Brazil is 74% of the total budget, which means a significant amount of support provided in this way. We have seen several examples of the improvements of the total factor productivity and the productivity in Latin America, and this is, we know that, a big success of the Latin American agricultural sector. But at the same time, we know that there are still problems associated with the sustainability. I have put here two specific topics. One is deforestation, which we know the rates of deforestation have been going down, including in Brazil, but they are higher than in other parts of the world. There are also difficulties in terms of the water, and we have here in this graph the list of countries which higher levels of risks in terms of water risk, in terms of quality or in terms of quantity in the future. And there in this top list of countries we find Mexico, we find Argentina, and we find Brazil as well. The question is that looking at the numbers that we have from the PSCs, we see that maybe in Latin American countries there is a bit less, it looks like there is less, sustainability is a bit less high in the agenda of these policies. And in the graph you saw there what is the percentage, the amount of support that is provided in different countries, which is subject to constraints, and most of them are environmental constraints. And we can see that in Latin American countries that we have in our monitoring, they are much significantly smaller than in other European countries, but also including in the US. However, if we look at that from the perspective of the percentage of the budgetary that is associated with these constraints, some countries, and particularly Brazil and Chile, they have already a significant amount of this budgetary support that is provided with these constraints. Innovation is, as we have been seen here, is a big success in many sense in Latin American countries. It has been mentioned already today, and particularly by the previous speaker, in terms of institutions, research institutions like MAPA, like INTA in Argentina, and others which have a real excellence, and they have specific examples in which they have contributed to improve the productivity of the sector. However, it's important that in order to keep this in innovation going, it's important that this dynamic process, the agricultural sector, it is more and more interlinked with the whole value chains in order to have the signals of what is the demand and the structures in the value chains. In particular, also combining with other sectors like services, like ICT services, areas in which, according to the the World Bank Environment for Business in Agriculture, have just 2 minutes, are not performing particularly well in Latin American countries. And the participation in the global value chains, according to the indicators of backward and forward participation, also in Latin American countries, tend to be smaller than in the rest of the world. Let me finish with just some conclusion. It's obvious that the agricultural policies in Latin American countries have shown clear success in terms of innovation, and particularly on research and development, and also in terms of reducing undernourishment and rural poverty. However, there is more to be done, and particularly there is need to continue the idea of developing and improving the targeting of the social policies for the poor, including the rural poor, being sure that there is more integration into the markets through trade and through connections to the global value chains and other sectors, because that will create also the flow of information and innovation that is required to create a dynamic in the sector. There is need to keep this and even reinforce the priority that there is in the innovation of the general services that it was shown in the previous graph, and even going beyond in this innovation, beyond the research and development, thinking about issues related with infrastructure, with access to services, and to the adoption of the innovations in a whole agricultural innovation system. And finally, it is important that there is a proactivity, and it continues this proactivity that has been shown for instance, in the presentation from the MAPA previous that we have seen, in terms of the proactivity in bringing the environmental goals into the policy design, with the idea that this is an advantage, of course, for domestic productivity and sustainability, but it also can be an opportunity for the future in terms of market access. So I think just to summarize that Latin American countries have already made a big effort in order to reduce the distortions in their policies in the past, and there is a need of continuing this path in terms of redirecting or even reinforcing the support of the policies, not to this kind of old-fashioned distorting support policies, but more in terms of the policies that really improve the services and the provision of public goods that respond to these priorities that we have been defining in this presentation. And of course, in this path, in order to get better policies, the OECD will continue giving policy advice and evidence-based assessment to facilitate this improve of the policies. Thank you.
Agradeço aí. Desculpa, agradeço aí a Florence e o Jesus, obedeceram bastante o tempo, e só para eu ter falado no começo, eles passaram terça e quarta-feira dessa semana, passaram a fazer um périplo lá em Brasília, Tesouro Nacional, Secretaria de Política Agrícola, Banco Central do Brasil, para se aprofundar, né, nas informações sobre a nossa política agrícola. Então, eles, e foi acompanhado pelos meus colegas da Secretaria de Política Agrícola, está ali o Wilson e o Moraes, que os acompanharam, e a informação que eu tenho é que vocês vão nos detalhes dos gastos públicos, do direcionamento de recursos. Então, nos dá muita confiança nos números que a OCDE faz. E eu imagino que se faz assim no Brasil, eu imagino que isso seja feito nos outros países também. Então, isso me dá muita confiança na parte técnica, na seriedade e na profundidade do estudo. Tá? Vou passar a palavra agora para o Paulo, aqui, que vai representar o BID.
Thank you for the invitation. Good evening, everybody. And I'm happy to present today to represent the Inter-American Development Bank and the work that we have been conducting on agricultural policies and the monitoring of agricultural policies in Latin America and the Caribbean. As my colleagues from the OECD said, we're part of the Consortium for the Monitoring of Agricultural Policies, a consortium that is formed by different international organizations that are working on the topic and that have been trying in the last few years to converge on the methodology so that to increase the coverage of countries that are monitored and to improve as well the quality of the analysis that is conducted. I'll go relatively quickly through my presentation because some of the topics clearly overlap with what has been presented already, and that's good news somehow because it's a proof that we're speaking the same language and that we're sending messages that are coherent with each other. Basically, looking at the context, which coincides a bit with what was said by my colleagues before, there are clearly some gaps in agricultural productivity and in the growth of agricultural total factor productivity in the region. And the other big concern is the relationship between this growth in productivity and the use of natural resources and the relationship with climate change and environmental sustainability of the policies and the production methods that are used in the region, with a particular emphasis on deforestation, especially for certain countries in which we have seen that the rates of deforestation have not gone down as possibly expected. As I was saying, in this context, what we tried to do was to complement, and this is a work that started already a few years ago, started at the beginning of the new century, trying to use the same methodology that the OECD had developed in the 70s and in the 80s. At the beginning of the 2000s has been basically adopted as well by the Inter-American Development Bank as a tool for supporting the dialogue with different governments in the region. Clearly, we have a different role than the OECD. We're much less of a policy think tank, but we are financing operations in the region, and we try to support this kind of financing as much as possible on rigorous evidence on monitoring and evaluation of actual policies that are applied. So basically, this effort led us to adopt the same methodology that was developed by the OECD without reinventing the wheel or without creating different methodologies that could lead to confusion. We basically adopted the same methodology and we applied it to the countries that were not covered by the OECD. The OECD is slowly expanding in Latin America, and basically they've taken over all the big countries, for which we're very grateful, and we encourage them to take over more and more, so we have less work to do. But we are still covering the majority of the countries of Latin America, especially the small ones in Central America, in South America, and in the Caribbean that are not covered by the OECD. And we are happy to continue to do that for a little while. As I said, this is a methodology that is quantitative. It's a methodology that is applied all across the world, so allows for meaningful comparisons. And above all, as I will show at the end, when there are enough number of countries and years that are covered, then it allows for some meaningful evaluation of the effects of the different policies in the different countries. I'm not going to go through the methodologies, exactly the same that Florence presented before, and we have a website where we publish all the different publications and the updates to the database that we produce twice a year. Of course, we report as well the other estimations that the OECD is doing, so that this allows for some comparability and better use by the public. And these are the data, for example, for Brazil that we report, and we of course quote the OECD as the author of this work. What we have done recently is a review that has been published in 2018, a review of basically all the work that we have published for Latin America and the Caribbean in the last few years. So all the countries that have been covered, and trying to classify, following the methodology, the different types of support that the sector is receiving. And as you can see, they can be summarized into five main categories. The first one is market price support, so everything that has to do with price distortion somehow. There are input subsidies that are very important as well in certain big countries of the region, as well as direct payments that are used in several of the countries. As we have seen before, there are some countries that are mostly focused on general services, or those that are closer to the definition of public goods. For example, Chile and Uruguay are two of the most focused on this kind of support. And we have paid some attention, more and more attention to the issues that are related to climate change and to the environmental sustainability, trying to look at the different countries and which ones are trying to skew their agricultural policy towards environmental indicators. We have seen that in the recent decades, this is basically a summary of the countries that are covered by the OECD already, and looked at how the protection, the nominal protection for the agricultural sector has evolved in the recent years. There has been a reduction, but the reduction has not been extremely pronounced, especially in the latest decades. And we've seen as well that the support changes a lot across the different countries. This is the total support to agriculture as a percentage of the GDP, and we can see, for example, that compared to the countries that were presented before, like Mexico or Brazil or Chile, that are covered by the OECD, Usually the other countries that are in Latin America and in Central America especially, and in the Caribbean, have usually a much higher level of support. So where these countries that have like a larger weight of the agricultural sector in their GDP, usually, and a bit by definition of the indicator, show a higher weight of the agricultural support in their GDP. And this is reflected as well in the level of PSE percentage. So basically the percentage of the income of the producers that is due to agricultural policies. We see that some of the countries, for example, Jamaica, Barbados, or other countries in Central America and the Caribbean, like the Dominican Republic or El Salvador, have very high level of support. And whereas other countries that are the countries where agriculture is mostly industrialized, the agribusiness is much more developed, the markets are much more developed, like Uruguay or Paraguay, or again, Brazil, this level of support is much lower, with the exception always of Argentina, that shows negative support for the reasons that we have discussed before, and that the representative of the government of Argentina has discussed before as well. So this is a bit the picture, and we try to show this to different governments, especially smaller governments in the regions that are not particularly familiar with this kind of measures. And usually the dialogue is somehow interesting, in the sense that when they see that there is a high level of support, the governments are usually very happy, because this shows that they are doing well. Whereas when they see a lower level of support, somebody is a bit worried. Whereas at a deeper analysis, the conclusion might be exactly the opposite. That like this is more for expert audience rather than the usual, and I would say the average policymaker in many countries. Another very important indicator is the level of general support in the total support. Here again, we have some of the countries that I mentioned before, like Chile and Uruguay, that have very high level of general support in their mix, and other countries like Paraguay or Suriname, for example, that have specific general support policies that shows very high. On the other side, again, we have many countries in Central America and in the Caribbean that have very low level of general support, especially because this kind of support is linked to fiscal expenditures, and in many countries, fiscal expenditures on this topic is particularly limited. Finally, this is again another tool that is very important to bring to the table when talking to the government. And this is where a bit the discussion becomes even more important. It's when you actually show that agricultural support that is based on market price is not coming as a free lunch, but somebody is paying for it, and usually it's the poor consumers. And this is where somehow the policy dialogue discussion becomes more engaging for the different parties at the table. I'm trying to go fast. Here we have a disaggregation by different sub-regions. Here there is a region, the sub-region of Central America, Mexico, and the Dominican Republic. As you can see, the orange part is the market price support, and you can see that it's the most important form of support in this sub-region of Latin America and the Caribbean. Same story with somehow the exception of Peru, is what happens in the Andean region with Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia that use it intensively. Peru has gone through some reforms in the last few decades that has changed a bit the picture of their support. Same story again in the Caribbean, very important presence of market price support, so price distortions to support the agricultural sector. And the picture is completely different for the southern cone, the countries that were mentioned before and that are mostly covered by the OECD, with the exception of Argentina that has negative support. In the others, the market price support is particularly limited. And this, again, is an important finding that helps the discussion with the different countries. And here I'm going to the conclusion. Basically, usually the discussion with the different policymakers is, okay, very good, thank you for your monitoring, but the main question is, am I doing it right or am I doing it wrong? And that's where the answer is a bit more difficult in some cases, because it needs to be supported by empirical evidence more than the economic theory. The economic theory says, there are certain support that are more distorting, others that are less distorting, and that's where we usually start the discussion from. And what we usually try to support is the use of public goods rather than more distortive kind of support like the market price support. But in the recent years, what we've tried to do is to use all the knowledge that has been generated by the OECD and by the IDB and by other entities in some cases to try to do a bit of a empirical analysis and look at what is actually the results that we see when we look at different types of agricultural support and their relationship with the performance of the sector. There are mainly two studies that have been done in Latin America on this. The first one was done by the IDB with the University of Maryland, and the second one was recently done in 2016 by, again, the IDB and the Catholic University of Chile. And the results are very similar. I'm not going to go into the econometrics of it because this would take a full afternoon. But basically the result is that the support on public goods actually has better returns in terms of agricultural performance. In terms of growth of agricultural income, there is a stronger relationship between public goods support and this growth. And this is a very powerful message that we bring to the table when discussing as well the allocation of public expenditures and the possible initiatives that the bank as well is interested in financing in the different countries. It doesn't mean that we manage to convince everybody all the time, but at least we try. And the summary of the second study that I mentioned is that basically a reallocation of resources from private good support to public good support is linked to an increase of agricultural per capita income of 5%. This is, again, a very strong simplification of the results of the study, but it's a powerful one that is useful to share with policymakers. Another distinction that needs to be done, especially in some cases, is that when we talk about public goods, we're talking about the general services that we were discussing before, and not, as in some cases it personally happened to me, somebody interpreted that we were supporting basically state enterprises taking over the agricultural sector, which is a completely different discussion, and clearly that's not what we mean when we talk about public goods in the agricultural sector. Closing up, we have seen that in most countries of Latin America, despite the trends that we've seen in the other presentation as well, market price support remains one of the main policy measures, and this is linked to higher prices that are paid by the consumers. In some countries, there are important programs that support direct payments and input subsidies, and in many countries, there are, especially in the southern cone, important investments in agricultural public goods. And this is something that should be supported in clearly taking into account the fiscal situations that we heard about as well this morning. The recommendations is usually trying to reduce the distortions that are linked to market price support, to invest more and more on much more neutral agricultural public goods. And one particular emphasis that we make, which again is linked to solid research, is that the returns on agricultural investment, investment on agricultural research are particularly profitable, and that's something that we try to support in the countries where we work. So thank you, and remain available. Thank you.
Bom, tivemos 3 apresentações extremamente interessantes, com um conjunto de dados muito ilustrativos, muito úteis para formulador de política, para estudioso do assunto. Estamos muito apertados com o tempo. Vou abrir aí, por favor. Vamos tentar ser breve nas perguntas. Se não, ali, ó. Ali vai ser em inglês.
My name is Abdullah Rabia from Saudi Arabia. Actually, my question is to Florence and Jesus, if possible. I'm trying to combine 2 topics together, the importance of expenditures on innovation beside the limited access to credit. When we consider the need of empowerment of youth and women to contribute to the agriculture sector, considering they may just started their career and they are brilliant enough, they have a lot of innovations, but they don't have collaterals to submit to the bankers in order to get the right funding levels. Don't you think that there is a need of influencing the policy change within the bankers to provide better evaluation of intellectual properties in order to empower youth and women?
Yep. Thank you very much for the question. I mean, the issue of targeting in general all kinds of support policies is crucial from all the analysis that we have been doing in the OECD. So it is very important that the policies that we design, they are targeted to the specific objectives we achieve. And definitely when we talk about credit and difficulties to access to credit, it is very important to identify where are the market failures or the constraints that make a proper functioning of the financial sector. And definitely targeting the measures in terms of credit support, rather than providing, as it is done in some cases, support to all kind of producers. The credit targeting to the specific groups which have particularly difficult to access to credit is the right approach. And even not only because it is solving a market failure, because often, as you say, these groups can create a new dynamic, a new introduction into innovation that is make the investment on this public policy much more effective and productive. So definitely it would be good to better target the policies, and particularly credit policies, maybe to specific tranches of farmers that may have these difficulties, rather than making a broad policy. And of course, among these tranches, youth and women could be a target objective.
Ok. Eu gostaria de fazer 2 perguntas, uma para a Florence e uma outra pergunta breve para o Anton. Florence, um trabalho análogo ao de vocês, a esse cálculo do PSE, é feito pela OMC. Eu gostaria que você nos esclarecesse um pouco da diferença conceitual entre o PSE, o trabalho de cálculo do PSE, e o que é feito analogamente pela OMC. São conceitos distintos, seria interessante que tivesse uma clareza quanto a essas diferenças. Em segundo lugar, como sabemos que são conceitos análogos, em termos de resultado, dos resultados da sua estimativa vis-à-vis os resultados da estimativa em si. Como que você compara e avalia esses resultados? Bom, se eu pudesse continuar, aproveito para me dirigir a palavra ao Anton, no que se refere à sustentabilidade. Sustentabilidade é um tópico que foi amplamente aqui explorado no dia de hoje. Você próprio também fez referência a esse aspecto e mostrou, inclusive, um quadro com indicadores de sustentabilidade. E, pelo que eu vi, o Brasil não estava ali, não figurava naquele quadro. E, de qualquer maneira, eu indagaria, na sua experiência, na sua avaliação, no que se refere ao Brasil, não é? Como que você avalia os avanços em termos da sustentabilidade, não só do ponto de vista da política voltada para a sustentabilidade, tivemos o ABC aqui que foi mencionado, não só em termos de política, mas também do ponto de vista das práticas, do ponto de vista da realidade e dos avanços observados em relação à sustentabilidade. Eu agradeceria se você pudesse elaborar um pouco mais sobre esse tópico, sobre esse ponto da sua apresentação. Obrigado.
Thank you, Mr. Moraes, for your question. So, I think that you are referring to the AMS. Okay. So thank you for your question. I think that you are referring to the AMS produced by the WTO. So, and we are calculating PSEs. So you are right that the two indicators are closed, but very different actually, because the AMS is a legal instrument and we are calculating an economic indicators. The main difference for me is the reference price that we are taking into account when we are calculating our market transfers. As you saw, this is the main component of the PSE. We are calculating these market transfers by commodity, meaning we are calculating a gap between the producer price and the reference price. But this reference price is a current reference price. The main difference is that as a WTO, there is an historical measurement, and the date is 1986, 1988. So that makes a huge difference. This is why our indicators are different.
Yes, just on the sustainability, that's a difficult and sensitive question, as you can imagine, and it's not that I try to. I mean, first of all, maybe the graph, the slide passed too quick, or it was too small. But Brazil is in the slide on the sustainability in the two graphs that I had there. One was on the deforestation rates, and the source for this was coming from the World Bank World Development Indicators, and it's getting a picture in which says that in terms of the rate of deforestation has been a reduction in the last 15 years compared to the period before, and it has also, it was part of the second graph in which we were including the list of countries according to a study from the OECD on what are the countries which have higher probability of having a risk related with water in terms both on quality and quantity, and in which in this list of 15 countries, Brazil is in the top countries having this risk. Brazil is in this list. So it was mentioned there. Then we have not. I mean, I have not done. We have not done an in-depth analysis of the agro-environmental sustainability of Brazil. We produce some indicators, and Brazil is included in these agro-environmental indicators that the OECD develops. You know very well because we work directly with the Ministry of Agriculture to develop these indicators and to find the best sources to make sure that they are comparable across different the different countries. And those indicators include measurements of in agro-environmental pressures in terms of nutrient balances, in terms of use of energy, in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, in terms of use of land, in terms of use of water. And I have seen all these too, which before coming here I have discussed with our experts in the OECD that is more knowledgeable about what is the evolution of these agro-environmental indicators in Latin American countries, and particularly in Brazil. And the two graphs that I put there are the two that they thought as a specialist as the main ones to be signaled as clearly affecting more of this, clearly the 6 countries that are in the monitoring and evaluation. On the others, and particularly when we talk about indicators related with the use of energy, the greenhouse gas emissions that we measure normally in percentage terms compared to the total economy. The numbers are higher than in other countries, but of course we have to correct for the size of the agricultural sector in many Latin American countries, which is a bit higher than in the OECD. So the measurement there is a bit more difficult to measure. I will not get into more details into the our environmental evaluation, because I really have not the knowledge and the details in order to go any further. But if there is interest from Brazil on this area, of course we'll be happy to talk and discuss if we can work further on that with Brazil on this. Thank you.
Vou precisar de interromper. Mas a sua pergunta, então, a última pergunta para o senhor. A última pergunta ali. Eu vou eximir o meu comentário.
No, sorry to take more time, and maybe off my own time, we'll speak later. My name is Rob Vos of IFPRI. We're part of the consortium which Paulo was talking about, so it's a great database. Now my question is, before we look at how to maybe suggest how to restructure the composition of the support measures, what do we actually know about how effective these, call them price incentives and income supports incentives are, right? So we recently tried to do a study to look at the support measures in order what's the impact on the environment, particularly on greenhouse gas emissions. So you can look at what crops are being subsidized and so on. But the first thing you need to know is to what extent is it promoting a particular type of production, and to what extent, in order to be able to assess, is it inducing more or less greenhouse gas emissions. So the point here is, before we say what should be the right composition, and to make sense of these comparisons across countries, we should also need to know what do these price incentives really do? Are they really promoting productivity? Do they serve other objectives? So in the case of Latin America, what studies have you done that would show what would be the right use of these support measures? Or if you compare with other studies, we know that the biggest productivity impacts, at least from cross-country studies, on agriculture come from research and development. So is the question, should we continue with the support measures to particular crops and farms, or should we invest more in research and development? Just a question.
It's more a comment than a question. Eh? Maybe Paolo should.
Well, the question is, have you done studies that show the impact, or is it still something?
Yeah, I'll try to answer. It's not easy, the question, of course, because especially when you're talking about market price support like tariffs or this kind of price distortions, it's very difficult to come up with a counterfactual to actually compare what would have happened in the absence of the policy. What we've done that I presented, it's a bit of a cross-country, cross-sectional analysis to see what are the effects in the aggregate of different types of policy measures. There is another study that actually we're working on. It's the case of Haiti, because Haiti in the 1990s has dramatically reduced its market price support. Basically, has opened the door to international trade in the agricultural sector, and there is very little empirical evidence on what was the result. The preliminary results that have not been published is that they show, with a synthetic control method that is applied, that actually yes, if they had kept the measures, most likely production would have grown. There would have been more production, but that's a bit kind of an endogenous result, because clearly population has increased. So if they wouldn't have opened to trade, they would have had to produce more. What is difficult to assess is at what cost in terms of general efficiency of the economy, and I mean then it becomes a question of a general equilibrium model, but general equilibrium model require a lot of hypotheses, so there is always a trade-off between the precision of the answer and the number of assumptions that one is forced to make. I don't know if I answered, but I tried.
Briefly on, yes, on this one. Definitely this is the key question, the impact of the incentives that are created by these different types of policies in terms of, usually in the OECD we're working in the past, and it was also in the literature, working on what are the impacts in terms of macro responses or even productivity, even that's a bit more recent. Now we have also to think about productivity in a broader way and thinking also about the sustainability, the extent to which they have impact on sustainability. The OECD is very much aware about the need to invest on this, and we are precisely about to come out with a study which has been precisely analyzing what is the linkages between the different types of support policies that we have in our categories, and in terms of productivity and in terms of sustainability. As Paulo was mentioning as well, this is very often very circumstance specific, and that makes it very difficult to make assessments, particularly assessments of causality of what is happening there. But the idea in the study from the OECD is using different types of approach, including micro data econometrics, micro data simulation models, aggregated simulation models, and using the literature available in order to try to investigate what is the connections, the links that exist between the different types of policy and the results in terms of sustainability and productivity. In productivity, the results that you mentioned in terms of research and development are well known, so it's very effective in terms of this productivity. In terms of the sustainability, we have a lot of indicators of sustainability, and the things is a bit more complex in terms of analyze what are the types of links and for which specific indicators we'll find what type of effects. But this is a difficult, and you're right, it is the core of what we need to learn to be able to give good assessment and good policy advice.
Ok, estamos sem tempo. Vou fazer um comentário muito rápido aqui, bem prático, do ponto de vista de uma pessoa que está na formulação da política agrícola. Fiquei bastante impressionado e não tinha, confesso, e até um pouco envergonhado, que não tinha familiaridade com os dados do AgriMonitor. Fiquei bastante impressionado com o nível de apoio que nossos países da América Latina estão. Alguns países têm um nível relativamente alto, e, em geral, bastante distorsivo. Me impressiona mais ainda como os produtores argentinos estão sobrevivendo com tanto apoio negativo. E, por último, destaco só uma coisa que você mencionou, que o redirecionamento de 10% das atuais gastos com bens privados, basicamente com suporte de preço, garantia de preços, né? Se eu mudar isso para bens públicos, eu poderia aumentar a renda per capita da agrícola em 5%. A notícia ruim é que, e eu já estou no Ministério há mais de 20 anos, e o Wilson não me deixa mentir, nem o Dr. Roberto Rodrigues, que já foi ministro, a quantidade de pressão que o formulador de política pública recebe para o outro tipo de política é muito maior do que para esse tipo de política, né? Mas é desproporcionalmente maior. É isso aí. Obrigado, então vamos encerrar esse painel.
Agradecemos aos participantes deste painel e, de imediato, anunciamos o painel de número 6 com o tema Perspectivas e Tensões Comerciais. Implicações para a agricultura na América Latina. Ele tem 2 subitens. O primeiro, Acordo Comercial Mercosul e União Europeia. São painelistas Luiz Araque de Juan, primeiro conselheiro da Seção Comercial e Econômica da Delegação da União Europeia no Brasil, e o embaixador Marcos Azambuja, conselheiro emérito do Centro Brasileiro de Relações Internacionais. Por favor. O outro subitem, negociações comerciais entre os Estados Unidos e a China. São painelistas Joseph Cooper, assessor sênior do economista-chefe do Ministério da Agricultura dos Estados Unidos, e Rob Voss, diretor da Divisão de Mercados, Comércio e Instituições do Instituto Internacional de Pesquisa sobre Políticas Alimentares. Será moderador Mazda Petsen, conselheira da Divisão de Agricultura e Commodities da Organização Mundial do Comércio.
afternoon, everyone. At the outset, let me convey the best wishes of my director, Roberto Azevedo, Director General of the World Trade Organization, for what already looks to be a very successful seminar. These are challenging times for economic growth. These are equally challenging times for trade growth, and we have heard this morning. The presentation that was made by the director of the Brazilian Institute of Economics was very compelling. He drew a very compelling picture of what's going on in international markets right now. And this is an equally challenging time for me, an international civil servant from an international multilateral organization, because now I have to introduce to you two very specific topics relating to bilateral trade negotiations. So without further ado, I would like to invite the first speaker, Mr. Luis Araque de Juan, first counselor of the EU delegation of Brazil. We heard this morning from the presentation from the Brazilian Institute that these are challenging times, and particularly that trade policy is very much behind risks in the international trade. And what we would like to hear from you is how these bilateral trade initiatives, the EU association, EU-Mercosur association agreement, particularly its trade component, is relevant for Latin American agriculture. Thank you.
Boa tarde a todas e a todos. É grande prazer para mim estar hoje com vocês na Fundação Getúlio Vargas. Gostaria de agradecer pelo convite ao que me fez o Marcelo, mesmo se o pedido que me fizeram não é fácil. Apresentar o acordo do Mercosur à União Europeia em 15 minutos não é impossível, mas quase. Vou tentar, vou falar em português, sou espanhol, mais cedo ou mais tarde direi algum espanholismo, mas vocês vão entender. Então vamos lá. Gostaria de começar com uma fala do presidente, ainda presidente da Comissão Europeia, até o final do mês de outubro, o Jean-Claude Juncker, que o dia em que fecharam as negociações falou: eu meço as minhas palavras cuidadosamente quando afirmo que se trata de momento histórico. No contexto das atuais tensões comerciais internacionais, estamos a enviar hoje sinal forte como os nossos parceiros do Mercosur de que defendemos o comércio baseado em regras. Eu não lembro muitos acordos que mereceram o qualificativo de momento histórico. Este sim, acho que por o momento, dois gigantes, a União Europeia e o Mercosur, deram passo à frente numa conjuntura econômica e comercial muito tensa. Já vimos esta manhã o contexto de incerteza, mas puseram sobre a mesa um acordo importante, baseado em regras e no comércio livre e justo. Isso acho que mereceu o qualificativo de momento histórico. Como coincidência e casualidade, 20 anos atrás do que fecharam as negociações, o 26 de junho de 1999, aqui mesmo no Rio de Janeiro, começaram as negociações. Então, 20 anos, 2 décadas, uma gestação muito longa, parto difícil, mas nasceu uma criatura com boa genética, porque tem pais grandes, tem o Mercosur, muita população, gigantesco em área, quase 3% do PIB mundial. A União Europeia, maior exportador mundial, maior importador, maior investidor mundial, muita população também, quase 22% do PIB mundial. E juntos fazem mercado de quase 780 milhões de pessoas e quase o 25% do PIB. E isso é grande. Vamos ver rapidamente, antes de entrar no acordo, quais são, ao momento, sem acordo em vigor, ao dia de hoje, as relações econômicas do Brasil com a União Europeia. Rapidinho. O comércio de bens é de 65 bilhões de euros, 33,6 para a União Europeia, 31,8 para o Brasil, diferença pequena, muito renhido. Se olhamos como evoluiu o comércio bilateral nos últimos 10 anos, em verde as exportações europeias, em vermelho as brasileiras, vem que até 2012 era o Brasil quem tinha superávit comercial como a União Europeia, que mudou de mãos em 2012. A diferenças pequenas, se vocês olham as 3 últimas colunas, fica a mesma magnitude, o comércio bilateral está retomando, crescendo, pequeno superávit do lado europeu. Dados interessantes, a União Europeia é o segundo parceiro comercial do Brasil, perdeu a primeira posição há 2 anos para a China. O Brasil é o 12º parceiro comercial da União Europeia, mas quando falamos de bens agroalimentares a coisa muda muito, porque o Brasil é o principal fornecedor de bens agroalimentares à União Europeia junto com os Estados Unidos. De fato, a mesma gráfica de antes, 10 últimos anos, mas só para bens agrícolas, a situação é bem distinta. Falávamos de pequeno superávit para a União Europeia, para bens agroalimentares, o que fica embaixo da linha do zero são as exportações do Brasil, o que fica acima são as nossas. Aí o Brasil tem superávit grande de quase 10 bilhões de euros, a relação é 1:7, por cada euro que a União Europeia exporta ao Brasil, o Brasil exporta 7 euros à União Europeia em bens agroalimentares. Comércio de serviços, 23 milhões em conjunto. Aqui a União Europeia, de novo, tem superávit, quase dobla as exportações do Brasil. É um mercado ainda que não desenvolveu muito, acho que o acordo vai ajudar ao mercado de serviços se desenvolver, tem muito potencial, tem potencial em áreas de telecomunicações, serviços financeiros, seguros, mas ainda fica relativamente pequeno. E quando falamos de investimentos, aqui a União Europeia é de longe o primeiro investidor no Brasil. A União Europeia investiu no Brasil nos últimos anos mais do que investiu na China e na Índia, acho que isso é muito significativo. Mais de 50% dos investimentos recebidos pelo Brasil vêm da União Europeia. O Brasil é o terceiro destino dos investimentos da União Europeia, só após dos Estados Unidos e da Suíça. Além disso, são investimentos de alta de qualidade em setores produtivos de alto valor agregado, como tecnologia, pesquisa e desenvolvimento, energias renováveis, que estima-se criarão mais de 278.000 vagas ou empregos no Brasil. Então, o estoque, o tema aí, 324 bilhões em 2017. Vamos já como conteúdo do acordo comercial. De fato, não é um acordo comercial, é um acordo de associação. A parte comercial é só dos 3 pilares que o acordo tem. Tem também pilar político, pilar de cooperação, além do comercial, que vão facilitar aprofundamento do diálogo político entre os 2 blocos, com certeza. Vão poder cooperar em muitas áreas, por exemplo, migrações, economia digital, ciberdelinquência, governança dos oceanos, longo, etc. Mas hoje estamos aqui para falar do pilar comercial. O que tem o pilar comercial do acordo? Quando se fala que um acordo abrangente, ambicioso, é porque tem praticamente de tudo. Não sei se conseguem verlo, mas tem 17 capítulos, faltam alguns anexos aí para automóveis, vinhos, mas tem praticamente de tudo. A única coisa que o acordo não tem é um capítulo sobre investimentos. E por que não o tem? Porque o mandato que recebeu a Comissão Europeia ao momento de negociá-lo em 1999 não tinha investimentos e isso não foi alterado. Vamos como o capítulo que mais chama a atenção, que é o acesso ao mercado do acordo. Aqui, em termos gerais, vemos que o Mercosul vai liberalizar totalmente 91% das importações provenientes da UE. A União Europeia vai liberalizar um bocadinho mais, 92% das suas importações provenientes do Mercosul. Quando falo liberalizar completamente, quer dizer zerar tarifas zero. A maioria dos casos, a maioria do acordo vai ser tudo em 10 anos. Em 10 anos as tarifas têm que zerar, têm que virar zero. Os cortes são lineares, então cada ano a mesma quantidade. Se temos uma tarifa ao início do acordo de 10%, tem que zerar em 10 anos, vai ser 10, 9, 8, é assim. Cada ano a mesma quantidade de redução. E no âmbito industrial, o que vai acontecer? Aqui a União Europeia liberaliza completamente, 100%, em 10 anos, sem exceção. E o Mercosul, que tem algum setor estratégico, defensivo, vai liberalizar em torno a 90%. Para alguns setores tem uma exceção, não vai ser em 10 anos, vai ser um bocadinho mais, 15 anos, por exemplo, o caso do setor automotivo, para ele tiver mais tempo de se adaptar às consequências do acordo. Por exemplo, o Brasil vai abrir veículos automóveis e seus componentes em 15 anos, como falei, vão ter um período de tolerância de 7 anos. Vai abrir máquinas, vai liberalizar produtos químicos e produtos farmacêuticos que para a União Europeia são muito importantes. E os produtos agroalimentares. Aqui o Mercosul liberaliza mais do que a União Europeia tem resistências. O Mercosul eliminará 93% das linhas tarifárias, a União Europeia 82%, o resto vão ser cotas ou preferências fixas. Aqui tem exemplos de produtos de interesse ofensivo para a União Europeia que o Brasil vai liberalizar: azeite, vinho, pêssegos em conserva, bebidas espirituosas, chocolate, que agora tem uma tarifa alta. Por exemplo, vinho 27%. E aqui o contrário, linhas pautais que a União Europeia vai liberalizar e que são de muito interesse para o Brasil. Vai liberalizar a União Europeia em 4 anos, 7, 10, alguns imediatos, como as uvas frescas. Por exemplo, o café torrado e solúvel é de muito interesse para o Brasil, que quer entrar na cadeia de valor, agregar valor e não só exportar café sem torrar, café verde. É a solução que se encontrou para os produtos mais sensíveis, a carne bovina, a carne de aves e frango, carne suína, açúcar, etanol, foram cotas como uma tarifa intraquota. Aí temos detalhes, não temos tempo de ver mais. Mas foi uma solução para 3 produtos, queijo, leite em pó, fórmulas para lactantes, os 2 se dão reciprocamente também um contingente com uma tarifa intraquota descendente em 10 anos. Medidas sanitárias e fitossanitárias é um capítulo muito importante, é o que governa o comércio de bens de origem animal e vegetal. Aqui, os 2 blocos vão cooperar mais, vão falar mais, os procedimentos vão ser mais previsíveis, ninguém perde nenhum direito do acordo SPS que já tem com a OMC. Uma coisa importante é o pre-listing, ou lista prévia, que é baseado na confiança de cada bloco no sistema de inspeção do outro bloco. O princípio de regionalização também vai ser introduzido, que é muito útil em caso de doenças animais focalizadas numa região. Os 2 blocos também vão ter diálogos nestas 4 áreas de interesse para produtos agroalimentares, isto é uma novidade. Muito importante, o acordo vai proteger 355 indicações geográficas do lado da União Europeia, vai proteger 220 do lado do Mercosul e 38, nomeadamente 38 do Brasil. As indicações geográficas são a propriedade intelectual do agronegócio, foram muito eficazes na União Europeia para reter a população agrícola no campo, porque gera valor, gera renda. Aqui estamos protegendo um jeito de fazer uma coisa, defender a sua origem e defender uma qualidade. Acho que estou sem muito tempo, mas gostaria de falar um bocadinho de regras de origem. Vamos se modernizar, o Mercosur tinha regras de origem um bocadinho já atrasadas, o acordo vai modernizar isso, facilitar o comércio. Não tem sentido um acordo comercial onde o comércio vai se multiplicar, se após nas alfândegas tudo são problemas, é burocracia. Então, facilitar o comércio, muita mecanização, muita automatização dos procedimentos alfandegários. Serviços, como eu falei, vai aumentar, serviços de transporte marítimo vão ser liberalizados, é uma oportunidade. Contratação pública, grande também novidade, as empresas do Mercosur vão poder participar em leilaos, em licitações na União Europeia e vice-versa. O mercado de compras públicas na União Europeia é trilionário, uma oportunidade para o Mercosur e também para as nossas empresas poder participar aqui em igualdade de condições com empresas brasileiras ou do Mercosur. Pequenas e médias empresas não foram esquecidas do acordo, vão ter instrumentos de informação para elas poderem se beneficiar do acordo, porque normalmente tem problemas para aceder às informações. Comércio e desenvolvimento sustentável, acho que virou protagonista no mês de agosto e setembro do acordo. O princípio de base é que o comércio não deve fazer-se em detrimento do ambiente, do meio ambiente e das condições trabalhistas, pelo contrário, deve promover o desenvolvimento sustentável. Neste capítulo, falamos de proteção do meio ambiente, direitos trabalhistas, direitos humanos, práticas empresariais responsáveis, etc. Ficam aí os compromissos dos dois blocos para aplicação efetiva dos compromissos que eles já têm em acordos internacionais, como o Acordo de Paris, o Convênio CITES, como a OIT. E, finalmente, já para acabar, vamos ver o impacto do acordo comercial no Brasil. O melhor é ver um exemplo de acordos que já estão em andamento, concretos. O Chile está em andamento há tempo, desde 2003. O que aconteceu no Chile, o comércio bilateral duplicou, e mesmo nos primeiros 4 anos, mesmo quadruplicou. Com o México, em andamento desde 1999, o comércio bilateral aumentou 133%. No Brasil, o governo e algumas instituições já fizeram projeções, fizeram cálculos de que pode acontecer, todos muito positivos, aí os tem, incremento do PIB, das exportações, do poder de compra, expansão do setor de manufaturas, aí tem as porcentagens. Mas o mais importante, acho que é isto. O que não é tão tangível como as poupanças tarifárias, mas o que vai acontecer em paralelo a essas poupanças tarifárias. Se o Brasil consegue acompanhar o acordo com reformas importantes, acho que a competitividade do Brasil a produtividade tem necessariamente que aumentar. O investimento estrangeiro vai chegar também em maiores quantidades. Com ele vai chegar transferência de tecnologia, o ambiente regulatório vai ser mais fácil entre os blocos, os Estados-membros dos Estados do Mercosur vão conseguir se integrar nas cadeias de valor, podem-se criar cadeias entre os dois blocos, e tudo o acordo vai abalançar as reformas estruturais. Para a União Europeia, calculam-se as poupanças em direitos aduaneiros em 4 bilhões por ano, isto é 4 vezes mais do que no acordo com o Japão e 8 vezes mais do que o acordo com o Canadá. A União Europeia tem 41 acordos em andamento, este vai ser o mais grande em termos de poupanças aduaneiras. O Mercosul também, como falei, vai abrir setores que são importantes para nós, o farmacêutico, químico, maquinário, automotivo. O agro europeu, sempre se fala que o acordo pode ser uma troca de carros por vacas. Não é assim. tanto a indústria brasileira como o agronegócio europeu vão ter oportunidades e desafios. Por exemplo, o agronegócio europeu vai se beneficiar de redução de tarifas, já vimos, para produtos importantes, vinho, azeite, etc. Vimos que as indicações geográficas muito importantes para o nosso lado, se vai prevenir a imitação, e os procedimentos vão ser mais claros e simples para todos. E já acabo, como último slide, os próximos passos. Agora mesmo o acordo está num processo de legal scrubbing, ou revisão técnica, por equipos jurídicos dos dois blocos. Assim que for revisado, que a revisão técnica acabar, vai ser traduzido às 23 línguas oficiais da União. Nesse momento, que talvez aconteça no final do ano próximo, o mais provável, a Comissão vai dar o pacote inteiro ao Conselho da União Europeia. Aí os políticos vão ter que discuti-lo, debati-lo, assiná-lo. Após isso, o Parlamento Europeu vai ter que dar o seu consentimento, o seu consent. E provavelmente, após desse processo, serão os parlamentos dos Estados-membros os que tenham que ratificá-lo. Obrigado. Prazer estar hoje com vocês.
Thank you very much. We have been a little bit over in terms of timing, and we have reviewed a little bit more than the EU-Mercosur agreement, and to the extent that you have also widened a little bit your presentation to see what the EU is doing with different other trading partners. So without further ado, I would like to call Ambassador Marcos Azambuja, Counselor of the Brazilian Center of International Relations, to take the floor.
Agora, muito obrigado. Eu agradeço ao representante da União Europeia que abreviou o meu trabalho. Ele fez uma apresentação que, de certa maneira, tinha uma clareza que informava os dois lados da negociação. O que eu venho dizer, essencialmente, é que, num certo nível de generalidade, estamos sempre todos de acordo. O demônio vive nos detalhes. É onde ele opera, onde prospera, de modo que nós levamos 20 anos não de ineficiência, de incapacidade, mas pela complexidade inerente a essa vasta dimensão de assuntos. O Brasil não é um sócio fácil. O Brasil tem uma dimensão que traz ele mesmo uma complexidade com a sua chegada. É um pouco um elefante num quarto. A chegada do Brasil causa um certo desconforto de volume, de presença, de diversidade. O Brasil não é um ator decisivo em todos os campos, mas tem um dedo em quase todas as panelas. O Brasil é, de certa maneira, e nós usamos isso como certa imodéstia, mas verdade, a global player. Então, jogar no palco da União Europeia é essência para nós. O Brasil, durante anos, vocês se recordam todos, jogou uma partida que era tentar, ao mesmo tempo, intensificar o Mercosul, fazer um acordo com a Aliança de Livre Comércio da América do Norte, com o NAFTA, e com a União Europeia. Eram 3 campos que nós fazíamos ao mesmo tempo em que fazíamos o que é mais dinâmico na economia brasileira, que é a aproximação com a Ásia, com a China e com os nossos hoje principais parceiros. De modo que nós temos uma complexidade inerente à nossa presença. De modo que não se levou 20 anos não fazendo nada, levou 20 anos de dificuldades reais. E não chegamos ainda ao fim da linha. O meu companheiro predecessor foi muito claro dizer, agora vai se fazer uma revisão jurídica do texto, uma análise desse texto, vão ser tentativas agora de tradução em 23 idiomas. Quer dizer, uma das vantagenzinhas do Mercosul, que tem uma escala muito menor que a União Europeia, é que nós nos entendemos de uma só língua. Um portunhol nos basta. Eles são 23 línguas de comunicação, o que é um verdadeiro pesadelo linguístico, uma Babel. E outra coisa que eu sempre que fui à Europa e a Bruxelas negociar, me dei conta de que os 27, 28, agora, eu não sei se eu ponho a Inglaterra ainda dentro, ou se eu tiro a Inglaterra já, o Brexit ou não, mas, de qualquer maneira, sempre que eu chegava para uma negociação, ia haver na semana seguinte uma eleição europeia. A Croácia ia botar alguma coisa, ou a Irlanda ia ter um problema. Em outras palavras, eles, a cada semana tem uma eleição, e temos de parar um pouco enquanto se decide isso. Em outras palavras, a complexidade do mundo europeu é inimaginável para nós. A nossa simplicidade é que somos no Mercosul 4 sócios, dos quais 2 decisivos, Argentina e Brasil, os outros essencialmente importantes, mas de uma simplicidade de estrutura muito maior. Então, eu quero dizer o seguinte, nós estamos chegando não ao fim da linha, ao meio do caminho. Eu concordo com a visão de que o que aconteceu é histórico. Aliás, eu tenho uma certa reserva à palavra histórico. Eu acho que quase todo momento é histórico. De modo que a palavra histórico e a palavra estratégico são palavras que eu uso com muita cautela, porque eu acho que elas cobrem quase todas as circunstâncias. Então, nós estamos agora chegando lá, numa situação complexa. E, sobretudo, porque o Brasil traz com ele uma complexidade na área mais difícil de negociação, que é o agronegócio, é a agricultura. A indústria, na minha experiência, é quase sempre acomodável. Ela é flexível, ela tem uma mobilidade, ela tem uma dinâmica que permite ajustamento. A agricultura vai ao âmago da identidade nacional. Quando se falou aqui em denominações de origem, são nomes de lugares. Quer dizer, a agricultura identifica a pessoa, os franceses usam a palavra terroir, com o seu terrão, o seu pedaço de terra. A agricultura tem uma complexidade infinitamente maior do que a negociação industrial, em que as permutas de coisas, de trocas, mas em agricultura a afetividade, a emotividade e as razões de raiz são mais profundas. Então, o que eu estou querendo dizer é que nós estamos a meio caminho de uma negociação que continuará a ser complicada, porque como ela deve se estender ao longo dos próximos 8, 10 anos, nesse intervalo acontecem coisas. Eu sou um péssimo profeta, sou um profeta de curtíssimo prazo. 1 dia, 2 dias, 3 dias. Eu, cada vez mais na minha vida, sou não mais histórico, mas meteorológico. Eu trabalho com 48 horas de previsão, não muito mais que isso. De modo que, quando falo em 10 anos, eu estou preparado para que tudo possa acontecer. Então, a ideia de uma negociação entre tantos atores, envolvendo a totalidade do seu fazer, é de uma complexidade que intimida. Por outro lado, é indispensável. O Brasil não pode ser autárquico, o Brasil não pode ser isolado, o Brasil não pode estar fora das grandes cadeias de produção e de valor. O Brasil tem de jogar o jogo, mas aceitando a complexidade inerente disso. O problema nosso, eu estou valorizando esses aspectos, porque eu creio que é importante complementar um pouco o que a visão da União Europeia é que não há nenhum campo em que o Brasil não esteja interessado. Quer dizer, é pecuária, é agricultura, são as commodities minerais, é a alta tecnologia, são as compras governamentais, é a propriedade intelectual. Tudo isso requer e reclama e sobretudo porque o Brasil não é insignificante em nenhuma dessas dimensões. E sobretudo porque já há um grande caminho percorrido. Para dar um exemplo, eu creio que o investimento francês no Brasil hoje é maior que o investimento francês na China. A segunda maior cidade de presença empresarial sueca, depois de Estocolmo, é São Paulo. Nós temos já uma relação de uma diversidade. Nós não estamos inventando a roda, não está aqui se redescobrindo o mundo. Nós estamos no meio de um jogo que tem uma complexidade muito grande. Então, eu quero acentuar isso. Nós temos grande trajeto pela frente, sujeito às turbulências e às incertezas de jogos políticos, em que, de um lado de lá, são 23 países, ou 27 países, e nós 4, a Venezuela excluída por algum tempo desse nosso jogo, mas vamos ver como é que isso se acomoda, que não se tentou até hoje nunca um jogo entre atores tão diversos, tão distantes, tão múltiplos. Portanto, há um elemento experimental no nosso acordo, alguma coisa interessante, intelectual e diplomaticamente e profissionalmente nisso. Então, eu queria acentuar todos esses dados para dizer que nós temos ainda muito caminho a percorrer, que o Brasil tem interesses que são incontornáveis. O Brasil tem, em matéria de agricultura, de pecuária, de commodities, interesses que são já totalmente visíveis. Mas tem também na área da ciência e da tecnologia expectativas muito grandes. Quer dizer, como é que nós vamos acomodar isso? Como fazer? Em outras palavras, eu volto à minha metáfora inicial do elefante no quarto. Não é fácil negociar com o Brasil. Como não é fácil negociar com a China, ou com a Índia, ou com a Rússia. A expressão que havia antigamente no Brasil era cachorro grande. Jogo de cachorro grande é um jogo complicado. São jogos em que interesses muito grandes atuam, de modo que não tem nenhuma ilusão de que nós não estamos chegando ainda à margem. Eu creio que o tempo, não apareceu a moça com... O seu olhar é indicativo que eu esgotei o tempo. Onde é que está? A jovem com cartaz não apareceu para me ajudar. Eu ultrapassei meu tempo já? Ah, não. Você...
No, you haven't. We are still looking forward to your valuable insights.
Eu fiquei apenas com medo que o seu olhar fosse uma crítica implícita à minha loquacidade. Não, o que eu quero dizer é que nós temos, então, portanto... obrigado, Deus te pague. Eu creio que nós temos aqui condições de negociar com frieza, com objetividade, sem nenhuma ingenuidade. O Brasil é um país que tem hoje a presidência da Organização Mundial do Comércio, onde as coisas não andam. Há muito tempo, a última rodada, Doha, não prospera. O Brasil tentou um acordo com a NAFTA. NAFTA mudou. Não nós mudamos, mas o próprio acordo entre o México, o Canadá e os Estados Unidos sofreu alterações entre eles. Portanto, a mutabilidade das coisas, a passagem do tempo. Então, eu queria apoiar a ideia da historicidade do que se fez, louvar o que já se foi feito, acreditar no seu desenlace final, mas dizer que há uma grande quilometragem pela frente. E, como eu disse no início, há países que têm 1 ou 2 ou 3 assuntos que interessam. Você atendendo a um país X, produtor de tal produto, ele está satisfeito. Mas o Brasil joga em todos os tabuleiros. Ele tem poucas fichas, mas tem fichas espalhadas em todos os tabuleiros. De modo que nós somos desconfortáveis como interlocutores, porque nós temos um interesse diversificado, múltiplo e crescente. De modo que eu queria dizer que eu vejo com prazer o que está sendo feito, com satisfação, mas com uma imensa dose de prudência sobre o seu desenho final. Nós estamos longe ainda de ver o contorno final. E, sobretudo, há um problema que é, para mim, central. A União Europeia foi construída, e eu vou me permitir entrar no terreno seu, a União foi construída na base de que a Europa cedeu a primazia industrial à Alemanha e a primazia agrícola à França. O que eles chamam na Europa política agrícola comum é uma política agrícola francesa. Portanto, o Brasil entra num jogo em que a Irlanda e a França têm interesses extraordinários, a Polônia também, em certa medida a Hungria também. De modo que nós incomodamos uma estrutura, porque não só pela nossa competitividade, que em certas áreas é extraordinária, mas pela nossa dimensão. O que eu queria acentuar cada vez mais é que o Brasil não vem com uma contribuição acessória, marginal, periférica, ele muda o jogo, ele é isso. Então, o que eu queria sugerir é que nós temos agora que negociar com um cuidado extremo, cláusula por cláusula, linha por linha, palavra por palavra, porque, como eu disse, e eu volto ao demônio com que eu iniciei, ele que preside as negociações internacionais, o demônio é mais presente na diplomacia do que Deus. Muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Azambuja. You are right. are not moving very fast at the WTO. But I must confess that I felt a little bit relieved when I learned that the EU-Mercosur agreement started negotiating in 1999. The agriculture negotiations started in 2000 between 164 members. So there's still hope, I think, on the, I'm quite optimistic, there's still hope on the WTO side. But I would like to pick up on something that you say. You said we have to see how things are going to work out. We have to study how, do basic homework and see how negotiations are going to play out in each of the sectors. Before I turn to the next panel of speakers, I just wanted to ask a small question for you to reflect on. Have there been any impact assessment studies? Have you conducted any impact assessment for the EU-Mercosur in the time frame that it has been under negotiation?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. Impact agreement, not specifically. What I would like to say first is that the negotiations have begun really in 1995 with a framework agreement between us and the Europeans. 95. Then 99 was really when we set the ball in motion, when we started the ball rolling. But there was no, Mercosur has something which is, I think, admirable and terrible. It lacks structures. Whereas on the one hand, Europe is overburdened by structure. Mercosur, in a sense, is too informal. It is almost done on a friendly, interpersonal basis.
It's creative.
Huh?
It's creative.
Creative is a word which disguises some kinds of curse. So it is creative, but it is also desperately improbable in terms of how it can react. So thank you.
In the news, and please, Joseph Cooper, who is senior policy advisor to the chief economist in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, is going to present some basic facts, some evidence on the U.S.-China negotiation.
Do I stay here?
Okay, wait.
Yes, please.
I guess I'll come up at some point. Hola. And the very fact, I'll wait for the slide to, oh, here we go. Okay. So, as Maji says, this is a very trendy topic, which is why I'm going to have an extremely boring presentation over here. OECD asked me to talk about U.S.-China trade relationships and negotiations, and well, what I'm going to do is, I took that as a sort of a general indicator of what to talk about. I didn't take that literally. So what I'm going to do is talk about the data behind that. And every slide I have is just data, publicly available data, so everybody will be bored to tears. What I can say about the trade negotiations is that if you look in the papers, you'll see that high-level trade negotiations started in Washington, D.C. yesterday between the U.S. and China. That's what I know, and that's was all from the paper. Let me give a little bit of a background here, just set the scene, then I'll talk about U.S.-China. I have a Latin America slide as well, but just some price data, global outlook. I threw in a little Amos chart here just as a shout out to our Amos colleagues. You can see sort of in major commodities, the recent trends have decreasing real prices, and for the most part, and the chart on the right, I just wanted to show for, when you see the word corn, that's using the American word for maize, not the historic use of the term corn. We have just a huge increase in global trade in corn and soybeans over the last 50 years or so, and especially you can see accelerating in the last 10, 15 years. So really, global markets have become quite significant for these products. And as some of your outlook discussions earlier, you see that global production and consumption are near record highs, and their production and consumption have been pretty close together, so there's no particular major stresses at the international level. And so these numbers are from last month. Numbers came out today from the USDA. And I tried to update the slides, but one of my slides has some trouble, so I still have the earlier one here. But the slides basically, these slides will look the same. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference using the October numbers. You see we see a fairly close correspondence between production and consumption between the major crops. And we still have some, we do have some tightening in corn and soybeans, and I'll get later to particular news today on soybean stocks, at least for the U.S., but in wheat and rice stocks particularly remain high. And you can see like about in around 2006 where they did get a bit on the low side for a while. Okay, let's get to the U.S. over here. So soybean prices just went down to futures prices just went down today, perhaps in response to the USDA announcement of soybeans. But we can see soybean prices are on the low side. They're still at the 5-year low, or at least they were. Now they're up 50 cents per bushel today, from 8.50 to 9.50 in the predictions compared to last month. Corn is relatively more favorable to soybeans, though today the corn-soybean price ratio has not really changed that much from last month. And you still see the year-to-year change. Wheat has fallen 7%, cotton prices 18%. And basically using our cash prices, the marketing year for USDA, at least until through last month, the corn and soybean prices were unchanged between the 2 years. And corn acreage has been higher than expected by the markets, given the difficult planting time situation in the United States. Soybean acres are significantly down. That's perhaps due to the maize-soybean price ratio, making corn more favorable. The USDA report from this afternoon does not have a major change. It has a smaller change in corn area and yields than the market expected. Soybeans have gone down, and I'll get into that later. I'll try to make this thing fairly fast since it's late in the afternoon. And here's to see over time, again, the price trends are generally, real prices have been falling significantly over time, and that's still our projection into the next 10 years. This is the projections from February, so they're older than the OECD projections. At the same time, there's been major increases in production of corn, soybeans, so there's probably it's not too surprising that we do see this sort of inverse relationship here between prices and production. And clearly, production has kept up with consumption. And I'll talk a little bit about livestock here. We have certainly U.S. cattle and pork inventories have been rising over the last few years. We have record U.S. meat production. These are numbers from mid-September, but if you put in the numbers from today, they're roughly the picture looks roughly the same. We still see record production. And that's not surprisingly, that contributes to lower prices, especially for beef. But there's hog prices are a little bit stronger. And that's where we've seen the most rise, but generally a year-to-year change for beef was fairly small, a little bit of a rise from last year. And you can see that relative to the 5-year lows, we're still on beef, we're still on the low side. And again, that's the production it's all on the high side compared to the last 5 years. Okay, let's skip that one. What we do see over time is the U.S. share of global exports is that there's a clear downward trend for most of the major crops. Of course, we have a rise in other countries, including in their exports and production, including Brazil, which may account for the U.S. share falling over time, and it's still falling in the last projections. And still, though, U.S. is obviously still a major share of production in number of crops. This slide data is a little bit old, but the relationships are still more or less the same. Number one for beef in terms of a global share of exports. And in terms of production, it's the same thing. Soybeans, we're up around the top. Maize as well. Okay, now let's get what you're here for. I just wanted to delay things a little bit. So here's what we see now. There's a slight total rise in U.S. agricultural exports in terms of value for 2020. These are marketing years relative to 2019. But what you can see, the yellow line is the share of U.S. exports that are accounted for by China, and you can see the rather large decrease from 2018 to the present. So what are the various events that are contributing to this? Well, you have, of course, there's the trade disruptions, African swine fever, weather issues, and the slide on the ASF is a little bit old, but obviously we all know about the ASF going on here. This slide here, this is kind of interesting. It's hard to see the axes, but on the left slide, the blue line are weekly prices in China for pork. And the line in the middle, the kind of yellowish line, that's the U.S. price, adding in transportation costs and the tariffs. And you can see now, if you look at the graph, you'll see that actually the U.S. price is in China, or at the port is actually, it's lower than the Chinese price. The red line is the difference between the two. And that's actually, so you see on the right here, you actually see there's been a significant increase. The yellow line are exports to China, pork exports to China this year, and you can see the significant rise over the last few months. And that data is there, stops at July, but August is still 5 minutes, I guess I better hurry up. It'll still go up a little bit. And this is our 10-year projections that we do a similar process to what OECD FAO does. The bottom line is this is U.S. pork production, and that's the OECD one is lower because they did their projections came out in June or July. We started ours based on numbers in October of 2018, so we really didn't have ASF in there. So presumably, so our next set of projections will have ASF, and it'd be hard to, I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but it will account for ASF. These little dotted lines are previous projections. Just to give some little context here of how unforeseen events can impact projections. China's average tariffs on the U.S. goods have been climbing over time. This is not a USDA chart. This is from a think tank in Washington, D.C., while tariffs on the rest of the world have been falling. Well, so how does this impact soybeans? I'm talking about soybeans because that's really where the story is for U.S.-China. It's the main story. And you can see, if you look back on the graph, it's prices where soybean prices are relatively higher at the beginning. We had drought in Argentina. Then in the summer of 2018, first Chinese tariffs in response to the trade tensions that sent U.S. futures prices falling. Then you have later on, you have some increase in U.S. prices due to ASF. Additional announcements of Chinese tariffs sent prices down, and I expect now they're a little bit up again. So you get the seesaws really, you can see all the volatility caused by weather, caused by trade, that goes into the market. And here we can compare. The blue is, I think we've seen a slide like this earlier. The blue is U.S. futures prices, and the green is Brazilian price. And not surprisingly, when there's this particular trade dispute, showed Brazilian prices increasing relative to U.S. prices. And a little bit of increase with truce. I just want to put this slide over here to show this USDA actually has you can obtain data from USDA. It will actually show exports to different regions, including China, before the shipments are actually made. Because exporters have to do for certain crops, they have to report shipments, and there's also exporters have the USDA do grain inspections, and that data is public as well. So they have daily, weekly data. If someone wanted to get the latest data before our Department of Commerce puts the trade data up, at least for certain agricultural crops, you can go to USDA and find data that's, again, daily and weekly updated. Okay. Well, so here's graphs over time, from September through August of U.S. Well, okay. Let me show over here. You can see the red line is current 18 to 19. Production is starting from September 18 to August, and you can see a major decrease in total soybean exports, 2018 relative to previous years, and you can imagine what that's associated with. That's almost the same graph, just with a little bit newer data on it. You see soybean exports going up in this August. That's the latest Department of Commerce data. And U.S. exports to China, you can see the red, earlier in the year, way down compared to previous years. There's a little bit of increase now, but the total is still obviously well behind previous years. But if you look at U.S. exports excluding China, well, you can see there's been some trade reallocation. U.S. is sending some of the exports, has increased exports, at least early in the season, to other locations. So, while the U.S. is exporting less to China, I wonder who would be exporting more to China. And you can see Brazil over here having significantly higher exports in that sort of October through November area. So that's obviously a clear substitution going on between the two. This is just World Bank data. Over here, there's other places to get it. And I tried to update this chart today, but it exploded because today's USDA announcement has U.S. soybean stocks down 28% compared to the estimate a month ago. So I decided just not to be too bold and try to fix that slide at the last minute. But what you can clearly see is that is an enormous increase in U.S. stocks and in stocks use predictions. And given you can see it occurs about the time trade tensions started. In China, we have obviously China. What happens in China is clearly going to have a strong influence on prices. You see, this chart here shows Chinese share of ending stocks as percentage of global stocks, and it's of course huge for certain crops, like rice. It's maybe 70%. Okay, this is over. So, it is difficult dealing with trying to account for the Chinese data, because there's one example here is that there was a November surprise in 2018. Suddenly, we found it was a maize production revision with major increases in production and stocks. So all of a sudden you have to adjust for that. And this last slide I show over here, also and it's continual. There's adjustments and assumptions you make about China. This is the OECD FAO baseline, USDA baseline, comparing previous and the current baselines, the soybean meal to feed to corn ratios, and those have been both OECD and USDA have significantly revised downwards these ratios. So and these are assumptions that's clearly impacted by the November surprise. So we have, I guess the Chinese data keeps us on our feet. And well, I don't have, I purposely don't have any text over here, so it's all data like I warned you guys. But these are some examples of the data we have on USDA websites on trade and production. And everything I had here was publicly available data. There was some data from Amos and also from the World Bank, but there's plenty from USDA.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for your contribution. I find that this is a very nice way to describe the US-China relationship through facts and figures. And I think this usually complements the presentations that were made earlier this morning by our colleagues from the Agriculture Market Information System. I would like now to turn to Rob. Are there more figures in store for us?
Good afternoon. This is the end of the day, so thought hopefully to speak to you something exciting, trade wars. The title of this subsession is US-China trade negotiations. As you've heard from Joe Cooper, he had a lot to say about the negotiation part. I think it was one sentence or maybe less. Maybe it's a very polite term of what's really going on. But let me not dwell on negotiations or what was done, but rather focus on the impacts, particularly for Latin America. And this is work that I've done with my colleagues David Laborde and Valeria Pinheiro at IFPRI, and it's part of a study that will come out at the end of this month, published together with IICA. I think was also here present today. So maybe to wake you up, let me first ask you whether you are worried about these trade wars and whether it's could be a main disruptor of food systems in Latin America or your own part. So who thinks it's going to be a main disruptor if you raise your hands? Nobody thinks? Nobody's worried? Okay, some very hesitant hands, so everybody else thinks there's no worry about the trade wars. You're fine with it? You're fine with it, or you are worried, okay. Well, we ran a little survey with Latin American experts, which we do off and on with an instrument called Mentimeter, as for the name says it maybe, a Mentimeter. Anyway, so what it shows here is what people thought of what are the main disruptors for Latin America's food systems, and the trade policies, or call them trade wars, comes out fourth, but consistently high up in the ranking after technological innovations, climate change, and changing dietary patterns. So in that survey, we also ask, how do you think the main actors will respond by sub-regions, or what will the US do, what will China do in response to the scriptures going on. So in the case of Latin America, you think that there should be a major trade policy response to the issues and the tensions going on between China and the United States. Yes or no? Is trade policy an answer to what's going on? Yes? Well, most think not. So it's they do think that the US will be active as it is. China to a lesser extent, surprisingly. But then for the Latin American regions and others, it's lower or more or less neutral where it comes to both tariffs and subsidy responses. So this is opinion, so let's go to some issues and the facts. So first, would they matter for Latin America? Well, Joe showed already some graphs of changing trade patterns that might impact. Of course, first thing to look at, are the US and China important trading partners? The answer is yes, they are, particularly where it comes to Latin America's agriculture exports. China's not the biggest one, but one of the bigger ones, and the US is a big market, and imports are important, particularly from agriculture imports from the US, more so than from China. So one should expect an impact. Then of course it matters what you export and what you depend on, and also what you import. To what extent these trade wars matter. Of course, we've already discussed the importance of soybeans in Latin America's agriculture, and since soybeans are one of the products affected by the tariff increases, particularly imposed by China, and since soybeans are exported also to China, that would be one thing impacted. But as a second graph, or the map here shows, it will differ quite a bit across the region. So the Mercosur countries, they have soybeans and other grains as important export crop next to meats, whereas in the other parts of the region, it's other crops that dominate, but not soybeans, although fruits and coffee, depending on which part of the region you talk about. So there's quite a bit of heterogeneity, so as a result, we expect a heterogeneous impact. Another way of looking at it, if soybean exports and grain exports from the US to China become more difficult because of the import tariffs, then one would expect others can jump in, including from Latin America. So would it only apply to those products or others, so that it depends on how similar the export structures are, how competitive are, particularly when we compare, say, the Latin American countries with the US into the Chinese market, or whether we compare Latin America's countries and China into the US market. So if you look at this, what we call the Export Similarity Index, it's a pretty lopsided story. So we see that Argentina, Brazil have very similar export structures, agriculture export structures, when going to the Chinese agriculture market, and all the other countries have very little similar structures, so they're not likely to be seen as competitors in that market. Whereas where it comes to the comparison with Latin America and China into the US markets, also the similarity index is quite low, also as you would expect. So there's not a lot of competition or trade diversion that you would expect to go on. So part of the answer you already have here. So what we're particularly interested in looking at what will happen to grains, but particularly soybean markets. Here's a graph that Joe also showed. It's the comparison of the US and Brazil's soybean prices. Only it extends till early October. And what you see here, what's mapped out here is all kinds of events that have to do with the trade negotiations or the imposition of tariffs. And we see a widening of the price between Brazil's soybeans and the US's when things started from the second quarter of last year. Then when there was noise about trade negotiations, the band narrowed again early this year, and it started widening again with the breakdown of those, what was called negotiations, in April of this year. Now, of course, this is circumstantial evidence of whether it's these trade tensions have an influence on these prices, but likely there's some association. So to get to more rigorous answers, we'll run some simulations, But the other impact, aside from opening up markets for Latin American crops in China or the US because of the mutual impositions of tariffs, of course there's the impact on the global economy, which also was discussed earlier this morning. Here we show a graph of the slowdown of global merchandise trade worldwide, which many, in this case these are WTO figures, associate with the trade tensions that are going on. So to show some scenarios on the impacts, we did some assessments through our global general equilibrium model called Mirago DEP, which looks at detailed agriculture markets around the world, how to interact with other sectors of the economy worldwide, how what's traded and what's not traded, in order to do simulations of trade policies, price incentives, and changes in agriculture markets on economic growth, on employment, and all kinds of other outcomes. So here we look at a number of outcomes from 4 scenarios. One is what we call the US versus China status quo, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's the situation at the end of last year. So we notice other things have happened since the beginning of this year, but so this is the status quo as of the end of last year. Then the second scenario is extended trade tensions, not just with China, but including the other trade measures that were taken during the course of this year, but also extending to the European Union, Canada, and other cases in terms of the imposition of tariffs and other restrictions. Then the first scenario is escalating trade wars that would drive things faster, which uses the same model, but including an endogenous, we call it game theoretical approach that would assume a sort of assess retaliation by different partners of impositions on one part of the fence, followed by retaliations elsewhere. And last, we've thought of a scenario which might be an alternative for Latin America. What would happen if Latin America would stimulate integration within its own agricultural markets, and whether that could mitigate some of the possible negative impacts from the trade tensions going on elsewhere on the planet. So here are the key findings. I hope you can see it, but basically the 4 scenarios are in each graph for the different sub-regions, starting Latin America, the Andean countries, the Caribbean, then South America, excluding Mexico, Mercosur, which might be of most interest here, and then whatever is left after these sub-regions are there. So to run a long story short, first the status quo will show some winners. So agri-food exports gain, but agri-food exports from Mexico lose. So it's particularly in the Mercosur that the gains are found, and that's consistent with what I mentioned before. With the extended tensions, we get similar types of impacts, although with some mitigating impact from the global slowdown in economic growth, globally speaking. Well, with escalating trade wars, that last effect predominates, and then everybody loses, right? And particularly in Latin America, we see that's the negative bars, or the bars that go down, both for agricultural and agri-food sectors, as well as other sectors of the Latin American economies. They'll lose out if things escalate further. So here's your answer. I would be worried if this escalates further, despite some maybe early gains some parts of the region will have. Then if we take the mitigating action, which basically tries to promote inter-regional trade integration, by further lowering tariffs, but also particular measures that would lower transportation costs. Then we see some benign effects across the region, although, as you can see from the graph, they're not to the same degree everywhere, particularly, again, Mercosur is winning, but also there will be some gains for Mexico, not for agriculture sectors, but for the other sectors of the economy, industrial sectors more in particular. So, to look at the aggregate picture, it basically follows, it summarizes in terms of the previous slide shows the impacts on export growth. Here shows the impacts on GDP growth, and what it shows here is that in the escalating trade wars, as I said, everybody loses also in terms of negative GDP growth, whereas in the other cases there could be some either no gains or some slightly positive gains, but the more positive outcomes would be the mitigating effects from stronger interregional trade within Latin America. Now, one more slide to close on that part. Again, as I said, the interregional trade gains are not equal across regions, sub-regions on the continent. It's particularly Mercosur that would gain through the food sectors, both agriculture, livestock, crop production. But industries would lose, whether those effects are more positive in Central America, but particularly predominated by gains in Mexico. Whereas for the ending countries, we would see very little impact. So if we think interregional trade would be a benign outcome, these differential impacts would also show that it might be very difficult to negotiate such a deal, knowing, or if this scenario is correct, that not everybody gains in the same way, so one would have to negotiate that more precisely. Of course, if we would have had all the detail about the negotiation with the European Union, we would be happy to run the scenario analysis also with that deal, whether that would be an alternative way to go in terms of hedging against the global impact from the trade tensions elsewhere in the world. So, in conclusion, impacts vary. In the short run, there are some gains, but also losers from this process. But with further trade tension escalation, we would see negative impacts overall. So if somebody has said that trade wars are easy to win, the question would be what the win would be and what it would mean. I would say who said that. You can imagine who said that. But in the longer run, we should expect, particularly with in the scenario of further escalation, prolonged effects, because prolonged slowdown, export erosion would then also slow down productivity growth and hence make Latin American markets and agriculture sectors lose competitiveness. As I said, the greater trade integration could be a mitigating impact and something to consider, but because of the differential gains, also something that would be difficult to negotiate. So let me leave that for your considerations on who wins and who might be losing from these trade tensions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rob, for sharing with us the results of your simulations and the mapping of who would be the winners and losers under these 4 scenarios. I would like to open the floor immediately for questions. See if there are any questions. We are a little bit late. And in the meantime, I would like to say also to our distinguished panelists, if you wish to intervene on each other's presentations, you are welcome to do so. doesn't seem to be the case. So, the session is closed. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much.
Agradecemos aos participantes do painel de número 6 e seguimos com a última parte deste encontro, comentários finais, o caminho a seguir. Convido ao palco, por favor, Roberto Rodrigues, coordenador do Centro de Estudos do Agronegócio da FGV-ESP, Jonathan Brooks, chefe da Divisão de Comércio e Mercados Agroalimentares da OCDE, e Eduardo Sampaio Marques, secretário de Política Agrícola, MAPA. Pela ordem, o primeiro, Roberto Rodrigues.
Bom, chegamos ao final desse dia extraordinário. Nós ouvimos aqui hoje, começamos o dia com uma visão bastante preocupante em relação ao futuro da economia global nos próximos 2 ou 3 anos, né? O professor Shimura mostrou um cenário bastante nebuloso em relação ao futuro, pelas tensões todas colocadas por ele quanto ao comércio internacional, temas ligados ao Brexit, e essa última questão agora, a guerra comercial entre Estados Unidos e China, ocupou um bom espaço da exposição do professor Shimura. Pois tivemos algumas informações muito relevantes sobre a posição da América Latina no cenário global agrícola, e agora, na parte da tarde, tanto a OCDE quanto o BID nos mostraram estudos muito importantes para avaliação da política pública, inclusive no Brasil e no Mercosul, tendo em vista a inserção internacional desse bloco. Mas esse último painel, com as 4 exposições colocadas, acendeu uma luz tão amarela, ou mais amarela, do que a luz colocada pelo professor Shimura na parte da manhã. O horizonte não é um horizonte de vitórias palpáveis ou sensíveis. Eu achei que todos os expositores na parte da tarde foram muito sutis e muito suaves nas suas avaliações em relação à própria extensão da guerra comercial dos Estados Unidos e China, que tem, obviamente, um contorno de caráter hegemônico, seja na área comercial, seja na tecnológica, né? Além dos componentes políticos que estão, obviamente, inseridos no processo. E é evidente que essa guerra vinha gerando um neoprotecionismo, que ia ficar caro para muitos países desenvolvidos, de modo que até isso é um elemento que pode ter interferido no acordo do Mercosul-União Europeia de uma forma até bastante rápida em relação a negociações anteriores. Então, de fato, eu acho que a última apresentação, feita por professor Cooper e professor Voss, mostram ambas que não é um cenário simpático que está colocado pela frente na área comercial. Não obstante, nós ouvimos também algumas falas mostrando que a agricultura dessa região tem uma capacidade nítida de se transformar num fator de redução da violência, da guerra universal, porque vai alimentar o mundo inteiro. Então, nós estamos fechando o dia com um cenário cinzento, mas com um sol nascendo no horizonte, que é o sol da América Latina alimentando o mundo. Isso me deixa um pouquinho mais de paz, que eu já tenho idade suficiente para não ter ilusões sobre viver muito tempo para ver a paz universal. Mas nos próximos 30 anos que me restam, pretendo fazer isso acontecer. De modo que muito obrigado a todos, foi um excelente dia, muito agradecido. Eu queria fazer uma última referência aqui, que não foi feita no começo do dia, porque é um dado interessante. Quem está patrocinando esse evento são os bancos cooperativos brasileiros. Área Cicobi, Área Sicredi. Para quem não sabe, o Brasil é um país que tem poucos grandes bancos. Tem 5 grandes bancos, né? 2 públicos e 3 privados. E o resto são pequenos bancos. Mas as cooperativas de crédito brasileiro, que são jovens, do ponto de vista de atividade efetiva no cenário financeiro global, nacional, se fossem todas somadas e fosse um único instituição financeira, já seria o 6º maior banco do Brasil. Mais do que isso, as cooperativas de crédito têm crescido mais de 12% ao ano nos últimos anos, em ativos e empresas, enquanto que os bancos privados têm crescido pouco mais de 3% ao ano. Isso mostra um potencial extraordinário de crescimento em setores organizados. E aqui foi dito que a organização dessa região é um fato determinante para o sucesso dela. Eu acho que essa é realmente uma lição interessante que recolhemos daqui e recolhemos também de que os bancos cooperativos têm dado testemunha, num país complicado como é o Brasil, de que é possível crescer vigorosamente com organização. Muito obrigado e até amanhã que nos vemos novamente.
If I stay here, thanks very much. And just to follow up on that, I think we're only at the halfway point because there's a day to come tomorrow. So I don't think there's any need for a summary of everything that we heard. But perhaps 3 points stood out that I think it might be worth emphasizing. One is, and this came up strongly this morning, is about policy being made in a context of just very high and increasing uncertainty. I'm a British citizen, by the way, and I thought, oh, I'll come halfway around the world. Maybe I can have a week without hearing about Brexit. But no, I can't. That doesn't seem to be possible. There's I saw a picture and it had a Star Trek picture, and it said the year's 2150. Planet Earth has concluded trade agreements with other galaxies, except for the UK, which is still trying to leave the European. They're still trying to leave the European Union. So that one drags on and on. But the broad point, I think, on this uncertain environment is that, and I think Rob picked up on this, is that it's this real danger of a retreat from markets, and I think that's something that there's good reason to be worried about. Trade protection carries its own costs, but trade protection is also associated with poor domestic policies. If you erect barriers, as we see with our calculations of support, they're associated with the wrong kinds of domestic policy interventions as too. And the other thing is that we know already quite a lot about exactly the kinds of policies that can really help with the development of the agricultural sector, and we saw that in the afternoon session where we saw our evidence on where the money's going and where we think the returns would be higher in the presentations of Jesus Florence and our colleague Paolo from IDB. So I think we know what works to a large extent, and there's a worrying sign that, at least in the short term, that policies could be pulling away from that. The second point is that one of the points that we do try to emphasize is the importance of productivity growth and the importance of trade. And sometimes, in public opinion, these things are seen as being as running counter to sustainability, whereas in fact they're essential for sustainability. And on the productivity side, if you want to increase production, as I said earlier, you can increase area, but globally there's no area to increase. You can apply more inputs, but many parts of the world are applying too many inputs, or you can increase total factor productivity growth. So if you're going to increase production sustainably, you need to increase total factor productivity growth. You're also going to need more trade, because the areas of the world experiencing demand and population growth are not the same as the areas where supply can be increased. So for sustainability reasons, we need both productivity growth and trade. Now that is really good news for Latin America. That's good news for Brazil. And then that comes to my third point, that despite that good news, there are still serious issues that policy will need to address on resource use and climate change mitigation. And I guess a concluding point is it's not just about the information. We can get the information, we can put the information out in public, but it's also, to a large extent, it's about the optics, it's about what people believe, and it's about us trying to inject that information into the public domain so that we can have an informed discussion based on agreed facts about the situation, and also an attempt to understand different points of view and recognize that there are trade-offs that will be involved in addressing these big concerns about ensuring food security, protecting the environment, mitigating climate change, and also providing livelihoods for farmers at the same time. And that can be done, but it needs a balanced discussion on the basis of the facts, and hopefully we're here to help you do that.
Obrigado, doutor Roberto, Jonathan. Obrigado. Eu vou tentar também fazer Começamos o dia com as incertezas do professor Shimura, e estamos até agora cheios de incertezas. E o doutor Roberto tirou um pouco de leite da pedra ali, um pouco do leite de otimismo aqui para a agricultura latino-americana, mas, de fato, acho que a incerteza pautou várias das abordagens que tivemos aqui hoje. A gente pode, em primeiro lugar, cumprimentar aí os palestrantes e quem nos apresentou os assuntos, que foi um dia muito rico em conhecimento, muito rico em informação, análise. Eu fiquei até positivamente impressionado, porque, mesmo para mim, e já admiti isso aqui mais cedo, eu vi muita novidade aqui, né? Vou tentar fiz um monte de anotação aqui. Aqui na questão das análises das políticas agrícolas e da sua segmentação pelo tipo de medida mais ou menos distorsiva, o privilégio ao bem público, ao bem privado em detrimento do bem público, e da necessidade e da conveniência de a gente partir sempre para poder focalizar o aumento da produtividade, o que se consegue principalmente por meio do fomento, por meio do incentivo, por meio do patrocínio aos bens públicos. Isso é bem compreendido, eu acho que está bem compreendido por nós, no governo brasileiro. O problema, eu vou usar uma alegoria que o embaixador aqui, Azambujo, usou, que acabou de sair ali, é o capeta, né? Eu estou lá no Ministério, como eu falei mais cedo, há 22 anos, e eu nunca vi mais de 2 parlamentares irem lá por um pleito de infraestrutura, por exemplo. Eu vi várias vezes mais de 10 parlamentares irem lá por um pleito de uma política privada, como o suporte de preços, o alongamento de dívidas, da política mais distorsiva, né? Isso, infelizmente, nós somos um país democrático, e como somos todos aqui na América Latina, e estamos sujeitos e o governo que está no poder tem que transitar por esse tipo de pressão. Então, muitas vezes, a gente sabe e tem consciência daquilo, mas, em alguma maneira, você tem que ir acomodando as coisas com o tempo e fazendo as coisas de maneira mais devagar do que você gostaria. Nessa questão da mudança climática, que eu queria ter feito um comentário com o Jean Paulo, aqui da Embrapa, ele falou muito das políticas. Hoje, há discussão ainda aqui no Brasil sobre mudança climática, mas o fato e vamos para os fatos, se você for para a agricultura, para o mundo da agricultura, os produtores rurais estão preocupados. Então, aqueles produtores rurais estão buscando investimentos em adaptação às mudanças climáticas, né? Então, quem pode ir atrás de investimentos em irrigação, ou mesmo aqueles que não podem, o Brasil, grande parte do território brasileiro, você pode produzir bem sem irrigação, então estão indo atrás de melhorias nos seus sistemas produtivos para torná-los mais resilientes às mudanças, aos períodos sem chuva durante a estação chuvosa, a períodos mais quentes ou mais secos durante a estação de crescimento das plantas. Então, você tem várias tecnologias que a própria Embrapa foi protagonista do desenvolvimento delas, e hoje são estimuladas pelos financiamentos dentro do plano ABC, da agricultura de baixa emissão de carbono, para melhorar, aprofundar raízes, você diversificar o sistema de produção, aumentar a matéria orgânica de solo, e com tudo isso você tornar o sistema mais resiliente, plantar árvore no meio fazer integração lavoura, pecuária, pastagem, Alternar a pecuária com a agricultura, com isso você melhora muito o solo. Tudo isso são práticas, inclusive, estimuladas, inclusive com um grau relativamente alto de subsídios, subsídios mesmo, diretos para propiciar condições ou capital para os produtores investirem nisso de maneira viável. Mas o esforço do Estado brasileiro nisso não foi só no financiamento. Teve um grande esforço da pesquisa, então foi um direcionamento de diferentes equipes da própria Embrapa para pesquisar essas tecnologias e, inclusive, no Ministério mesmo, outras áreas foram mobilizadas para fazer fomento, implantação de unidades demonstrativas. Contamos, inclusive, com o investimento internacional, o DFID, do Reino Unido, propiciou recursos para a gente colocar milhares de unidades demonstrativas com essas tecnologias do sistema ABC. Por fim, aqui agora sobre essa questão de... Não, mais uma coisa, eu anotei aqui. E eu fui anotando aqui, você tem que... A agricultura está nas costas dela, combater a desigualdade, gerar renda para o próprio produtor, produzir alimento para a sociedade toda, e, ao mesmo tempo que fazer isso, proteger o meio ambiente e mitigar os efeitos das mudanças climáticas. São muitos desafios, né? Nas costas do coitado agricultor que está no campo. Imagina o agricultor argentino, que, além de tudo, ainda tem um PSE negativo, né? Então, pesam sobre os ombros dos agricultores expectativas muito altas, né? Muito altas. E, ao mesmo tempo, temos que fazer políticas que, às vezes, ele não percebe aqui no primeiro momento como sendo positivas, mas que que os estudos demonstram aí que a longo prazo são aquelas que ele mais precisará no longo prazo, e ele tem que fazer tudo isso também nesse ambiente de incerteza que a gente viu agora. Então, tem um problema acontecendo no relacionamento do China com os Estados Unidos. Aqui no Brasil temos uma fala, deve haver uma tradução em todas as línguas desse ditado aqui. Quando os elefantes brigam, a grama é que sofre, né? Então, a grama são, aqui nesse caso, são os agricultores aqui da América Latina e de todos os agricultores do mundo inteiro, né? Quando os elefantes estão brigando, a grama é que sofre. Oi? E no quarto, do embaixo da Zambu, já ia acabar com o quarto todo, né? A expectativa no Brasil é grande aqui em relação a que o acordo comercial com a União Europeia seja ratificado, mas, como bem frisaram os painelistas, estamos no meio do caminho ainda, né? Ainda temos halfway to go, metade do caminho para frente, mas a expectativa persiste, né? No mais, estaria aqui amanhã de novo. Amanhã temos um dia mais focado, mais nacional. Hoje temos um dia mais global, amanhã um dia mais nacional, focado para as políticas mais aqui do Brasil. Tá bom? Então, obrigado, até amanhã a todos.
Com estes comentários, nós encerramos os trabalhos deste dia. Desejamos a todos um bom retorno às suas casas, suas famílias, bom descanso, e amanhã o trabalho recomeça às 9 da manhã. Está encerrado o primeiro dia deste seminário. Boa noite.